Hello, shall my friends, please sit down. You've been summoned to attend the meeting of the County Council of the City and County of Cardiff on the 27th of February 2020 for the purposes set out in the summons. There is no planned fire evacuation, so if the alarm sounds, it is not a test. The council meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast on the council's website, and we have simultaneous translation available at this meeting. Contributions are very welcome in Welsh. Please indicate if you wish to speak in Welsh. Members listening through their headsets should use channel 1. I also ask that members are respectful to each other at all times during the debates. Item 1, apologies for absence have been received from Councillors Bowden and Linda Morgan. Are there any other apologies?
Councillor Rees-Taylor.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? No? Item 2 is declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility under paragraph 10 and 11 of part 3 of the Members' Code of Conduct to declare any interests at the commencement of the meeting and complete a personal interest form. Even if you've completed an annual form, there's still a need to declare any disclosable interests at the meeting. This is especially important for recording the interest in the minutes. In relation to item 9, budget proposals 2020-21, councillors who are members of the Cardiff and Vale Pension Fund or have been appointed as local authority school governors or appointed to serve on joint committees and joint bodies as council representatives have a personal interest but can remain in the meeting and speak and vote on the item. The list of councillors who are members of these bodies is included on the amendment sheet to allow for those interests to be declared collectively and be recorded in the minutes. If you are listed, there is no need to fill out a separate declaration form or declare your interest as an individual. Will those members who wish to declare an interest as members of the Cardiff and Vale Pension Fund please say aye? Will those members who wish to declare an interest as local authority appointed governors please say aye? Aye. Will those members who wish to declare an interest as members of community councils please say aye? Aye. Will those members who wish to declare an interest as members appointed to joint committees and or joint boards please say aye? Aye. Are there any other declarations of interest for this meeting? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have 4 declarations to make. I am a member of South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority. I am a director and trustee of Diverse Cymru, a director and trustee of Cartref Care Homes, and in addition to the final interest, I, as you know, am engaged in an ongoing legal dispute with Cardiff Bus. There is a proposal contained in the budget involving a £13 million investment to Cardiff Bus. I have taken appropriate advice from the monitoring officer and section 151 officer and will be remaining in the room for that, the budget item, because the principal decision will be taken at the next council meeting in March on the Cardiff Bus matter. At that meeting I will be declaring a pecuniary interest and leaving the room. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Mackie, please.
I have a sister who's head of integrated care.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hilljohn, please.
Yes, I'd like to declare an interest as a board member of Cardiff Bus.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lister, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd just like to declare an interest as a member of South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority.
Thank you, Councillor Owen Jones, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm also a member of Cardiff Bus.
Councillor Joyce, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I live in a council property.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lay, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm also on Cardiff Bus.
Councillor Ellesmore, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just want to declare my chairing of the Cardiff and Vale Regional Partnership Board.
Thank you very much. Councillor Norton, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm also a member of South Wales Fire Authority.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Robson, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In previous years, being a member of the Cardiff Credit Union has been declarable.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sandray, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm also a member of Cardiff Bus.
Thank you. Councillor Dilwar Ali, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm also a member of the Southhill Fire Authority.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ibrahim, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Also Fire and Rescue Authority.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Also a member of Cardiff Bus.
Thank you. Councillor Bradbury. Oh, sorry.
Apologies, Lord Mayor. I'm also a member of Cardiff Credit Union.
No problem. No problem. Councillor Bradbury.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm a trustee of the Cardiff Story Museum.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stubbs, please.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I'm the event director for Tremorfa Park, and I intend to talk about Tremorfa Park in my remarks later.
Councillor Williams?
Sorry, Lord Mayor, I forgot to declare that both my parents are employees of Cardiff Council and my mother is a trades union official for GMB at Cardiff Council as well.
No problem. No problem. Councillor Michael, please. Settle down, please. Councillor Goodway, please.
Yes, similarly member of Cardiff Credit Union.
And Councillor Goddard, please.
I'm also a member of the Credit Union.
Is that everyone? Wonderful. I'm terribly sorry, Councillor. I didn't see you.
Member of Cardiff Credit Union and pension fund as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor McAvoy. Unless there is anyone else, no? I will move on to item 3, the minutes of the council meetings on the 20th of January 2020 and the 30th of January 2020, approved as a correct record. Thank you, friends. Item 4 is public questions. We've received 2 public questions for the meeting today. A copy of each question has been published with the agenda papers and is also available on the website. Question 1 is from Mr David Han to the Cabinet Member for Housing and Communities. Councillor Thorne, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Mr Han, for your question. The Council is currently in the process of acquiring the former Transport Club building on Tudor Street in Riverside as a future housing development opportunity and to facilitate the overall improvement of the Riverside Business Corridor. We have had some success recently in addressing the problem of rough sleeping in the city. The success is due in no small part to the work of our outreach team in providing positive social activities for homeless people, where they can engage in an informal way with services. The team has already supported around 300 homeless individuals to take part in activities such as art, photography, music, interwork and money advice workshops, as well as coffee mornings and social sports sessions. The outreach team is currently using the annex to the former Transport Club to provide some social activities for our homeless population. While the longer-term plan is the redevelopment of the building, we are currently considering the short-term use of the building as a more comprehensive advice and activity centre for people experiencing homelessness. The project is one of a number planned for this year to help single people and couples who are homeless to turn their lives around through positive intervention, education and diversionary activities. The centre would be available to clients seeking support or engaging in meaningful activities and would provide access to computers for digital inclusion and to enable individuals to claim benefits. It would also provide those sleeping out or in emergency accommodation with somewhere to go during the day, somewhere which is safe and where a range of activities and education opportunities can help them get their lives back on track. Access would be controlled and drug use would not be tolerated either inside or outside the building. At present, these proposals are still under development, and any significant change of use of the building will, of course, be subject to public consultation in the usual way.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr Han, do you have a supplementary question you'd like to ask Councillor Thorne?
Yes, I do. With respect,
could you press your microphone, please? Oh, thank you.
I hold this down.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
With respect, my question was with regards to what consultation with local residents and businesses had been carried out prior to the opening of the drop-in centre at the old Transport Club on Tudor Street. and I don't feel that was answered. My secondary question, if I may ask that now. As a small business owner with various customers, several of whom are single women and children, and talking with other small business owners and residents from the area who have observed an increase in both street dealing and antisocial behaviour since the opening of this recent drop-in scheme, we feel we must ask, how can this be adding to the redevelopment of the area of South Riverside?
Thank you, Mr. Hand. Councillor Thorne.
Yes, I'm sorry you didn't feel that I answered the question properly, but none has taken place yet. We are already, as I said, we are drawing up formal proposals. Once we've done this, then we will go through the proper consultation, public consultation process.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hand. No shouting out, please.
In terms of antisocial behaviour, we have locality wardens which manage our high-rise blocks, including Lichfield Court, and there are and have been over the past year a large number of antisocial behaviour activities where the police have been involved, and that is a homeless those are flats which are available to homeless people, and actually was built in the late 1990s specifically for homeless individuals. But I can tell you that I've looked since January last year to September this year, and on average there were 10 reports per month of antisocial behaviour from Lichfield Court. During November, when we started actually using the Transport Club, that reduced to 4. In December it spiked a bit, and in January it went back down to 4. I accept that there is antisocial behaviour in that area. I cannot accept that it is down to the activities that are currently taking place. They're no different really to the activities which were being put on coffee mornings 7 days a week at the Little Man coffee shop in Tudor Street. And I think that actually the things that we're looking to do will actually remove that antisocial behaviour, but I do understand your concerns, and we will be monitoring it and taking account of it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hand. Sorry, that's it, right? Yeah, I'm sorry, so that's it, I'm afraid. Question 2 is from Mr. Richard Collins, the Cabinet Member for Culture and Leisure. Councillor Bradbury, would you like to respond to the question?
Hello, thank you for your question, Mr. Collins. I'd just like to say at the start, I don't agree with the assertion that the city has lost a majority of its grassroots music venues, and business rates are not set by Cardiff Council, they're set nationally. But it's my understanding that the Transport Club was closed, like many pubs and clubs within the UK and indeed Riverside actually, as a whole in recent years, as it was no longer viable for it to operate as a social club, for the simple reason that it was not used enough by paying customers. I recognise the challenges faced by the city's grassroots music venues, but there are still many thriving and sustainable venues in the city. And through working with partners in the city on the newly established Cardiff Music Board, we will be exploring various ways to explore these venues. The Leader Council has also written to Welsh Government and the Minister for Finance to request that rate relief is provided for performance venues in Wales in order to help support their future viability. As was confirmed by my Cabinet colleague, Councillor Thorne, in reply to the previous question, the Council is currently in the process of acquiring the former Transport Club building for development of social housing in the longer term. In the short term, proposals are being developed for the building to be used by some of the most vulnerable people in our communities in the form of an advice and activity centre for people experiencing homelessness.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Collins, you have a supplementary question.
Just a point about thriving venues in Cardiff. I understand what you're saying, but as part of the Cardiff music scene, we feel that we're really down to the bare bones at the moment. If you look at recent years, we've lost Buffalo, Abacus, 10 Feet Tall, Goody Hugh, Dempsey's, Bogies, and all the venues. I understand what the Welsh Government is trying to do to support these venues, but we really do feel like we're down to the bare bones. So I was just wondering, as a proposal from me, in the short term for the building, would you be interested in leasing me the building where I could start a community art space funded by me, and because there are so many kind of interesting models to get this off the ground. It could be kind of community owned. It would keep the kind of local residents happy, like Dave, who feel that this area of Riverside is saturated with similar services, needle exchanges, probation services, and this could be a space for all local residents to enjoy, for a representation of the area, a representation of local cultures where we could all come and enjoy the building and be a real kind of asset for Riverside.
Well, thank you, Mr. Collins. Councillor Bradbury.
Unfortunately, it's not my gift to be able to make that sort of commitment, and my cabinet colleague has replied in the previous question as to what we've actually doing with that building at the moment. However, I take on board the point that you're making in terms of music venues in general. The council actively supporting Goody Hugh to be relocated with our economic development team, helping them with their business plan. We're actually working with the music board, for instance, to make sure that the sector has a strong voice, not just in protecting existing venues, but to build a thriving music scene that our capital desperately wants and needs. We're also, you may have read about the signature music event that we're actually putting together with the sector, not just major artists, but grassroots stuff as well. We've supported ventures like the Tram Sheds, which has created a very good sustainable music venue just round the corner from the Transport Club. We've given a 125-year lease to Chapter in the last few years, and we've also supported community art in venues such as Canton Community Hall. The important thing is that the sector, when sector and music lovers go out and use these venues, that is the best way of defending them. And I say that as somebody who's a strong advocate of Wommaby Street, and I love the Westgate pub, which closed in South Riverside, for instance, and and they need to be used, and that is the important thing, to make sure that community venues like this are viable in the long term. But I'm happy to meet with you to discuss your vision for art in the city, and just afraid that in this particular case it's not my gift to give to you in terms of the Transport Club. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Item 5 is Lord Mayor's announcements. It was with very great sadness that we were told of the death of former councillor Anne Cox, who had been a councillor for Plasnewid Ward for 13 years. Anne was 87 years old and first elected as a councillor for Cardiff City Council in 1991. Anne was a huge champion of women's rights and worked during her long career for Women's Workshop and later Women's Aid. Our thoughts are with Anne's family and friends at this very difficult time. Councillors Joe Boyle and Mike Phillips will be running the London Marathon in late April on behalf of the National Autistic Society and Mind. Fundraising pages will be included on the members' diary when circulated tomorrow. Might also add that Councillor Mike Phillips is also competing in the Ironman Wales to raise money for Mind. Well done, Mike. Item 6 is petitions. Members, you have 1 minute to present a petition stating the purpose of the petition and indicating the number of signatories. We can only accept validly presented petitions at this meeting. Are there any petitions, please? Councillor Hudson.
Thank you. This is an online petition of over 2,300 signatures. It states, I won't read it all because it is fairly long, I will praise it. Cardiff Council wants to remove the sports storage, changing rooms and toilets within Heath Park, as they state that the facilities are underused and that this justifies turning them into offices, but they are not advertised or made available to the public. The local youth football club pays to hire a storage container in the car park nearby and goes without toilets or changing facilities because they didn't know the building existed. We would ensure it's accessible to the local community so that park users have access to toilets, local groups and can use the space, and sports teams can continue to use toilets, changing rooms and storage. This petition is supported by Cardiff City and Met Korfball Club, Castle Bowman Archery Club, Cardiff Raptors Korfball Club, Heath Massive Run Club, Heath Park Rangers Football Club and Cardiff and District Football League. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hudson. Councillor Burnham, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have a petition which has been collected largely, well, it's been initiated by residents in Penellan who are concerned about the fact that there are ongoing safety concerns at the junction of Kimberley Road and Blenheim Road. There have been various accidents over the years. There have been improvements in the past, but these haven't resolved it. And there are frequent near misses there. So the petition is calling on both Cardiff Council and the Welsh Government to work together to make securing the funding and delivery of road calming measures for the junction a key priority in the coming financial year.
Thank you, Councillor.
5 signatures on it.
Thank you. Unless there's any other petitions? No? Okay, thank you. On to item 7. Item 7 is the Standards and Ethics Committee Annual Report. There is an amendment to the table outlined on page 12 of the report, which shows an analysis of complaints on a quarterly basis, which is included on the amendment sheet. I invite Professor James Down, Chair of the Standards and Ethics Committee, to propose the report. You have 6 minutes, Professor.
Okay, I'm delighted to present the annual report of the Standards and Ethics Committee 2018-2019. I'm sorry that this report is slightly delayed due to several vacancies arising on the committee over that year and the resulting quorum issues as we recruited new independent members. We've also been impacted by the significant work involved both by council officers and independent members in the recent 5-day standards hearing. You'll notice in the report that the foreword was written by Richard Tebboff, as the contents cover the period for which he was chair. And I would like to place on record my thanks and those of my colleagues on the committee and beyond for his excellent leadership and commitment to ethical issues in Cardiff Council over the last 5 years. For the sake of completeness, the annual report includes up-to-date information on matters which the committee started considering during the 2018-2019 period, but has since concluded. So that includes membership changes in the committee, senior officers' personal interests, and the aforementioned standards hearing. I hope that the report illustrates the committee has worked proactively in promoting good standards of conduct, as well as reacting to instances of actual or alleged misconduct. So we have attended full council and certain committee meetings to observe behaviour, and we have repeated this exercise across a number of visits to town and community councils as well. We've worked closely with the Democratic Services Committee in designing, interpreting and responding to the survey of members. While the most recent survey has just closed, our next committee meeting will discuss those responses in relation to the questions about standards issues. We've also held meetings with political group leaders and whips to discuss ethical behaviour, and we published member briefings on conduct issues throughout the year. I'm glad to say that the number of complaints about the misconduct of Cardiff councillors remains low, and there's been a marked improvement in the conduct at full council. I think this is something that should be celebrated, while recognising there is always more that can be done, and that an individual case, whether that's within Cardiff Council itself or one of the town and community councils, can unfortunately mean that all councillors can be tarred with the same brush. Councillors will note from the report that comments made on social media have led to several complaints. I would like to continue to urge all councillors to take care to avoid unduly personal or misleading comments on social media, and to be aware of the Welsh Local Government Association's guidance on how to use social media effectively. The committee were particularly concerned at behaviour in this respect at the recent standards hearing, and hope that such matters can be dealt with in future in a calm and professional manner, as the public would expect of all its elected representatives. Finally, the committee urges members to continue to report to the monitoring officer matters of concern so she can deal with those appropriately. Members are also welcome to raise any issues directly with me. To conclude, we all have a responsibility to promote and maintain high standards of conduct, and I would welcome any comments or questions members have on this issue and on the annual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Are there any comments or questions? No? Okay, well, thank you very much, Professor. On to item 8, which is the Cardiff Council Corporate Plan 2020 to 23. And I invite the leader to propose the report. You have 6 minutes, leader.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise to propose the corporate plan for 2020-2023. Council will be aware that my Cabinet approved a refreshed version of Capital Ambition in January. Shortly afterwards, as some of you may have seen, I attempted to summarise what the administration has achieved so far into 2 minutes. I failed badly, although I think perhaps with the 6 minutes allotted to me today, I might get a bit closer. Don't worry, I'm not going to attempt to do so. But I do think, even though the corporate plan is a forward-looking document, the confidence in its achievement rests on our credibility for delivery. Indeed, at the start of this administration, the Leader of the Opposition challenged me that the success of our ambition would be judged by our delivery of it. I believe that what we have achieved in 2.5 short years speaks for itself and should give anybody confidence that this corporate plan will deliver our continuing agenda of creating a greener, fairer and stronger capital city. So when this plan talks about a progressive response to Brexit, based around creating new jobs, attracting inward investment and a programme of major regeneration projects like Central Quay, the Indoor Arena and the East Cardiff Industrial Strategy, we do so confidently, knowing that 20,000 new jobs have been created in Cardiff in the last 2 years alone, knowing that in Central Square we have one of the finest pieces of regeneration anywhere in the UK, that work on the bus station is now underway. When this plan talks about initiatives like the Living Wage City and our new employment service, we do so knowing that through our work, Cardiff already has over half of all accredited living wage employers in Wales, that the number of businesses supporting the Cardiff Commitment has trebled since 2017, while the Interwork service is assisting more people into work than ever before. But in order to build this inclusive economy, education will remain our top priority. It is only through the huge progress we have made in school standards that we can now credibly talk in this plan of continuing to improve school performance and reducing the attainment gap between children from our most affluent and our most deprived communities. I will leave it to Councillor Merry to elaborate on this work as she seconds the corporate plan, but she rightly deserves huge credit for driving this incredible progress. Let me just say, however, that we will only achieve our ambition of becoming a child-friendly city when Cardiff is a great place to grow up for all our children. Indeed, there is no issue more important than looking after our most vulnerable children, particularly those in our care. And so this plan sets out how we will continue to build a new preventative early help service for children and families that puts the right intervention in place at the right time to help shift the balance of care in children's services. And as with our younger citizens, so too our oldest. I will never tire of joining dignitaries on tours of the Dementia Centre in Ely, which we opened in 2018, because the partnership working between the Council and the Health Board, exemplified there but present in so many areas across the city, is an inspiration. The work of these teams is lighting the way that other public services will need to follow. They are perfect examples of what I meant when I talked about creating within our public services one team working for Cardiff. Now, when this plan talks of 2,000 new council homes, we do so knowing that from a standing start we have already built nearly 200. Our plans to expand our community hubs networks builds on the incredible success of our hubs programme that has been keeping services open and running in communities through a decade of austerity. And this plan also sets out a response to the climate emergency that we declared last year. And it does so on a solid foundation. Foundations such as recycling rates, which would be the envy of other major cities. A tree canopy programme that has seen 8,000 trees planted since 2017. Or a bold programme now being delivered of transformative transport projects to drastically reduce our carbon emissions, air pollution and congestion. Now, we recognise the areas of challenge, which is why the corporate plan sets out the steps for addressing long-term sickness absence, transforming the balance of care in children's services and ensuring a high standard of street cleanliness for all our city, not just most of it. Mine is not an administration that seeks to hide away from the challenges. This plan is open about where we need to improve and sets challenging but achievable targets to meet over the coming year. Across the board, this plan makes the big calls and it makes the right calls. So in concluding, I want to thank the performance panel which includes all scrutiny chairs, which has once again assisted in selecting performance indicators and targets for inclusions in the corporate plan. And I want to place on record my gratitude to everybody involved in the development of the plan, from council officers working behind the scenes to members' contribution and scrutiny. Your input, advice and challenge has helped to make this a better, stronger plan. But I particularly want to thank my colleagues on the Labour benches for the support you have afforded me, because today is the 120th birthday of the Labour Party, and so much of Cardiff's history has been written by politicians from the Labour Party. We have written one chapter of that history together these last 2 years, of which we can be mightily proud. This corporate plan sets the plot of the next chapter, and I approach it with excitement and confidence, knowing that it is underpinned by clear Labour values, it sets a bold vision, and it will be delivered by a team across the Council and wider public services that has the talent, energy and commitment to achieve great things for our city. I commend the corporate plan to the Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Merry, do you wish to speak now?
My Lord Mayor, I am pleased to second this corporate plan. I won't speak for long, because I think the priorities which the leader has just expressed speak for themselves. But as Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Education, I would like to emphasise the central role that education has played and will continue to play in delivering our capital ambition agenda as set out in this corporate plan. Until relatively recently, many of Cardiff's schools were failing our young children and young people, failing to give them the start in life that they deserve and failing to help us bridge the gaps between our richest and poorest communities. In recent years, our education system has seen major improvement, but this change did not happen by accident. This administration set out a clear vision of success and put in place the right changes for learners to thrive in Cardiff. We have shown what we can achieve for our young people with political leadership, managerial skill, brilliant teachers and the fantastic contribution of everyone involved in education. This corporate plan sets out how we will build on this success. The priorities are focused on the people of our city, with a particular emphasis on the well-being and life chances of our young people. And making Cardiff a UNICEF UK child-friendly city is a standout commitment for me. A city where children and young people of all backgrounds are safe, healthy, happy and able to share in the city's success, with their rights respected by all. Education is naturally a major part of turning this ambition into a reality. Working with UNICEF UK, already over 70 of our schools and our rights respecting schools, and we're working towards earning this distinction for all of Cardiff schools by 2021. And more broadly, in the coming year, we will begin to deliver our ambitious Cardiff 2030 vision for learning and education in the city. This corporate plan sets out the steps we will take to make Cardiff a great place to grow up for all of our young people and a city capable of meeting the significant challenges that lie ahead. I therefore commend this corporate plan to the Chamber.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'd like to open the report up to debate, and we have 35 minutes in total. And we'll start with Councillor Robson, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I would like to propose a reference back on this report, back to Cabinet to have another look at it. Let me start with some positives, and there are some positives in this report. There are some elements where I do agree the Cabinet have been successful. For example, there's work with the taxi trade to introduce low-emission vehicles into the fleet. That will be a big plus for the city. I'm sure the taxi drivers will be delighted to have new taxis from the council. And of course plans to increase support to the victims of hate crime, to encourage them to report the crime. I liked the fact that that line was honest and said that we don't really know what the problem actually is and the level of the problem. But there are a few examples, but there are many examples where things could be better. So, for example, and I'm getting sympathetic nods from Councillor Jones here, Adults, one of the reports says that adults who can influence local decisions affecting their local area is below 20%. So less than 20% of adults in this city don't think they have input into decision making in this council. And that's something that actually, whatever your political view, is a real problem. Because if your population that you represent doesn't feel engaged in terms of actually being able to input into how this council works, then I think it's something that, there's no strategy to counter that. There is, as I always say on these reports, no mention of council tax in this report, and maybe that's perhaps part of the reason why so few residents feel they're not engaged in local decision making when these issues around council tax are not throughout these reports. And then we look at the KPIs, and the KPIs are a tale of two KPIs. There are those that are not challenging enough, and then there are those that are far too high and are probably not going to be met. So, for example, in the not challenging category, you have the percentage of municipal waste collected and prepared for reuse and recycle down at 64%. The number of staying visitors is just estimated to be a 2% rise. We're the capital city of Wales. We're one of the core cities. We should be looking to achieve a lot better than that. And in terms of the lines about delivering fewer and better council buildings, there are actually no targets at all yet that are yet to be set. So at least, even if you don't agree with the rest of what I'm saying, you must surely recognise that they're targets that should be in this report and therefore support a reference back. But those that are high are also unrealistic. So, for example, you have percentage of highways land inspected by the local authority. That's at 90% apparently. Well, I'll believe that when I see it. And I'm not going to talk about children in care because we've spoken a lot in this chamber about that, but there is work there still to be done. But I want to focus, as I conclude my comments, on sickness absence, because sickness absence is at 9.5 days in the council, just shy of 10 days, which of course is 2 weeks of working days for every single full-time employee. And that, to my mind, is quite shocking. We've been banging on in the opposition groups, not just this group, but other groups as well, about how to get our sickness absence under control in this council. And this plan does not give any detail about how, even hints about how that's going to be achieved. So it's really disappointing that after so many years that this is not under control. And actually, I looked at the Pratt scrutiny letter following the session that committee had.
Could you wind up, please, Councillor?
And yes, I was pleased to see comments reporting the Chief Exec indicating that a new strategy is needed. But we need this captured in this report. We don't need warm words. We actually need things down on paper that will be enacted. And therefore, I move the reference back so that this report can be strengthened.
Thank you, Councillor. Is the reference back seconded? Thank you very much, Councillor Cowan. On to Councillor Henshaw. I seem to see where she is.
Sorry. I recently heard the Leader of the Council and my ward colleague, Councillor Hugh Thomas, set out the renewed capital ambition for the city. The document is an opportunity for the administration to restate and reaffirm its values. It feels like those values are embedded in the corporate plan, which reinvigorates our drive for a fairer, stronger, greener city. This feels like a corporate plan that supports the commitment we all share to make Cardiff a UNICEF child-friendly city. As I read through the plan, I see education as the top priority, a commitment to closing the attainment gap in education, looking after our most vulnerable children, investment in new preventative early help services for families, investment in youth services, making sure that children in our care have the support from us as corporate parents that they deserve, investment in building new council houses, responding to the climate emergency. This feels like this is a corporate plan to be proud of. It really makes me think another future is possible. But as I'm reading through the plan, it's a stark reminder that our corporate priorities are, I quote, developed in the context of sustained and severe financial pressures within our public services. I'm really concerned that over the life of this corporate plan, the Council faces cuts of £73 million. I'm concerned particularly in the light of Sir Michael Marmot's landmark England review published this week, where he says austerity has taken a significant toll on equity and health, and it's likely to continue to do so. I quote, if I'm allowed, the Financial Times, the leading expert, draws a shocking link between social deprivation and health changes. Life expectancy has stalled for the first sustained periods in 120 years after a decade of government austerity, and heartbreakingly 4 million children now live in poverty. One of the principles of Sir Michael's review was give every child the best start in life. I hope he'd be pleased to know in Cardiff our corporate plan does just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will be closing the list at Councillor Joel Williams. Councillor Hinchy, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This 3-year plan has direct links to and from our Refreshed Capital Ambitions document. It sets out the what we are planning to do and the details of how we're going to achieve it. It sets out a very ambitious programme of projects and work streams over the next 3 years. It also specifically allocates each activity against a responsible person and key performance indicators to assure members that the Council is delivering. But let's be clear, it's not the kind of document that is designed to gather dust on a shelf at County Hall. It will serve as a regular reference point for all our Cabinet members, senior officers and those who scrutinise each area to ensure it produces what it says on the label. I am confident our Refreshed Capital Ambition document and this corporate plan will be the cornerstone to building the kind of city all our citizens can be very proud of and deserve. We make no apologies that the plan, once again, is both challenging and focused. It specifically sets out challenging targets to achieve it. It prioritises supporting people, particularly those in our communities who are most vulnerable. Housing, education and social services, the services that touch people's lives the most, are rightly joined up in these corporate programmes. Forgive me for concentrating on well-being objectives 1 and 2, pages 15, 8 to 18 and 27 to 28. Cardiff is a great place to grow up and Cardiff is a great place to grow old. All of us, most of us, have joined forces and become dementia friends. Our corporate plan sets out what we are doing to deliver practical support to underpin these things. For example, we want 100% compliance dementia training across the whole authority. Our integrated living service will support age-friendly city ambition, enabling and empowering older people to remain at home and live happy and fulfilled lives. Objective 1, Cardiff is a great place to grow up. Cardiff has set out a challenging set of objectives to support our children and young people who need us, our next generation of citizens. We aim to create a range of placements here and around Cardiff to reduce the number of children out of county. Homes for children, not children's homes. We have set ourselves high expectations to recruit more kinship and foster carers, enabling us to provide a safe and secure home environment for all children looked after. We will improve practice through the rollout of signs of safety, keeping children with their families when it is safe to do so. Working with Welsh Government and others to build and retain sustainable workforce, not only here in Cardiff but across Wales, will be the most difficult challenge of all. There are many others that we will return over the coming months and years, but we will continue to support those most in need. John F. Kennedy once said in January 1961, "If a free society cannot help the many that are poor, it cannot save the few that are rich." Cardiff should be a great city for all our children.
Can you wind up, please, Councillor?
Investing in aspiration and life chances from an early age, in particular those from our city of deprived areas, is at the heart of our ambition.
Thank you, Councillor Hinchy.
Our corporate plan today before you will shape the kind of city that we're all proud of. Thank you,
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorne, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, I rise to support the corporate plan. The corporate plan demonstrates our commitment to supporting people out of poverty and creating safe, confident and empowered communities as set out in our wellbeing objectives. The plan confirms that we will continue to deliver our Community Hubs programme in collaboration with partners. Work has already commenced on developing Whitchurch and Reader Penney library buildings into hubs with help from the Intermediate Care Fund. We also want to ensure that people are connected with local service providers and activities in their neighbourhood through the work of the community inclusion officers. And work is currently ongoing to develop a new specialist youth hub in Butetown, which is due to be completed in the spring. In addition, we are progressing plans for a youth hub in the city centre and looking to develop similar hubs in Ely and Riverside in the future. The plan highlights our commitment to addressing homelessness. This year we have successfully prevented over 1,700 people from becoming homeless. And as you know, the Rough Sleepers team and outreach work has made huge progress in reducing the number of rough sleepers to its lowest number for 6 years. Nevertheless, the numbers of families and individuals presenting as homeless is still growing. We will continue to deliver our rough sleeper and homeless strategies in order to address this issue. We are also reviewing our current rough sleeper services and working with partners to put effective support in place which ensures that no one has to spend a night out on the streets. Building new council homes is a major commitment, and we have the largest house building programme in Wales. An ambitious new council house building programme is on target to deliver 1,000 council homes by May 2022. 236 homes have been built to date. A further 230 homes are being constructed, with planning permission in place for a further 9 sites. We are developing plans for the Channelview estate, which will deliver around 400 new homes, 200 to replace the current substandard housing and 200 extra. I will also be bringing forward plans next month to secure a site that will deliver around 500 new homes. Lord Mayor, the corporate plan underlines our continued commitment to tackling poverty and inequality in Cardiff, and I'm pleased to support its approval by Council.
Thank you, Councillor Thorne. Councillor Boyle, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, I took a look at the corporate plan first produced by Councillor Heather Jones when she was leader. Joyce, I beg your pardon. I do fear. Much has been done, it said, to reduce the gap we know exists between those living in the prosperous areas of Cardiff and those in the city's more deprived communities. A generous acknowledgement of the work that had been done to close that gap. At the start of Councillor Thomas's administration, the narrative had shifted. The Southern Arc was now the poorest part of all Wales. This year, the situation worsened still. The gap between rich and poor in this city is too wide, and it is growing. So much for JFK. That's what 120 years of Labour hegemony gets you. The gap is growing. So well done, Cardiff Labour. All the graphic design in your corporate plan cannot hide the fact that your tenure, by your own words, in your own corporate plan, has made this city a less fair place in which to live. Of course, on the other hand, if you're a developer interested in knocking up a cheap as chips block, your quid's in. I took a close look at this plan to see what it said about the quality of the built environment. Nothing. I think Councillor Thomas and his cabinet must look at these architect mock-ups of their designs and think they're real. You know, the ones muted pastel watercolours of sharp-suited business tyros striding across a plaza phone to ear, young couples sipping a latte while kids gamble around chasing butterflies. Councillor Thomas, those drawings aren't real. They're designed to lure the naive
settle down, please,
and sell you a dream. What in fact we get is the nightmare of rabbit hutch boxes in the St Edmunds development that so alarmed Councillor Bale's Urban Resilience Group. We get the faceless, cheerless and frankly 30 years out of date chrome and glass of East Tyndall Street. And we get the Central Station Square. One of the finest pieces of regeneration, we were told. My God, what an opportunity missed. All that guff about Cardiff being the most Liverpool city tried to con us that we would step out of the station into an engaging, green, varied space, instead of which we have a bleak expanse of concrete, a couple of chain stores, the frankly weird columns of the BBC building, 2 wind tunnels, and a space so lacking in biodiversity that it doesn't improve but worsens the climate emergency. That failure is epitomised in this corporate plan. Not a worthwhile word about design or, God forbid it, architecture, the fabric of what we leave behind for future generations. But then the guy in charge of planning says he's proud of the Zenith building, a building of such unremitting ugliness that if that's the Zenith, the Nadia will be something else. So no, on this single ground alone, not only can I not support this plan, but I too support a reference back so that some proper work on urban design can find its way in. Lord Mayor, a more unequal city and an uglier city. It's a toxic combination.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. Councillor Cowan, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have formally seconded the amendment. Well, ladies and gentlemen, councillors, another year, another document with another reference to austerity. Lord Mayor, I suggest that we have a fundraiser for your charities, because the number of times that Labour councillors and AMs mention austerity, I think the charities will be funded for many years from now. It does appear that the Labour governing party can't think of anything else other than to blame other people and shy away from their responsibility and taking control of a failing local authority. Labour have sadly been in control of Wales since the inception of the National Assembly for more than 20 years. A body, and the statistic is alarming, a body which has seen council tax in Cardiff rise by nearly 200%. Yes, that's right, no need to adjust your ears, 200%. And I won't take lectures from colleagues in Labour on how to set out an amendment and an alternative proposal, which is kinder to the vast majority of our taxpayers. The document clearly shows that you couldn't run a raffle. I would like to say on a positive front, Councillor Thorne, I think you're doing well tackling homelessness in the city, and I adopt. No, I mean this with great sincerity, Linda, and I adopt exactly the same approach as you in getting people off the streets and into safe, warm and welcoming accommodation, giving people a fresh start when they are struggling, many of whom have had really, really bad luck. Many people, as we know, are just 2 or even 1 paychecks away from being homeless, and that's why I feel passionately that we need to support the taxpayers by keeping council tax as low as possible. Waste management. Now, I could speak for half an hour, but I obviously don't have the time. I'm sure people will be concerned to read that it's not a statutory service. It's an area, in my opinion, which needs scrutiny of the highest order, Councillor Michael, and I'm calling on the leader today to put in place a root and branch investigation on how we can improve, save money and dramatically reduce sickness levels, as it's a really big worry. While on the topic of sickness levels, I couldn't believe we are aspiring to have a target of nearly 2 working weeks sickness leave for every full-time employee. Nearly 2 weeks for every full-time employee is your target. That's just devastating. And I'm really perplexed as to why we don't talk to experts in the field who collate and write reports for a living. They can give advice on how to capture data in a clear and open format and ensure we set targets for everything and to track performance of previous year's statistics, because all we have, councillors, is a snapshot in time, and it doesn't help us to see a clear picture. I have requested this for years and nothing has changed, sadly. Anyone can write aspirational text, but without a clear delivery plan and specific targets set with a backdrop of the current position, we are sadly doomed to failure.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Burnham, please.
Thank you. I'd also support the reference back on the corporate plan, and I'd certainly echo Councillor Boyle's concerns about the built environment. I may struggle to match his rhetoric on that, but I did particularly want to pick up on his points about Central Square, because when the administration that I led was launching that project, the whole idea was to create a real gateway into the city, so that when you arrived in Cardiff, you came out to a vista that really told you you were in Cardiff, you were somewhere exciting. And what we do have, I'm sorry, it's a concrete jungle. It's a concrete jungle.
Councillor Goodway, no.
And the buildings are uninspiring. The BBC building might be quite nice inside, but on the outside, it's nothing great, to be quite honest. It's just a lot of office blocks. So I agree with Councillor Boyle. We need to see more ambition on improving the built environment. But I also feel that we need to see more about the climate emergency. Now, the administration has made a huge issue of this. It's featured in the corporate plan. But I don't see enough running through what's been presented to show that you're really classing it as an emergency. I appreciate there are good measures in there. And I don't dispute those measures, but you need to be having it as a running thread action going through. It has to be first and foremost. We have to put it ahead of other concerns. So, for instance, should we still be going ahead with building a new car park to facilitate the delivery of the new arena, or should we not be putting the environment and tackling climate change first and foremost? What happened as well to the programme that the previous Lib Dem administration was drawing up about really trying to get improvements in insulation for a lot of the older properties in the older parts of the city. We've got to do more to generate energy efficiency as a contribution to cutting climate change. We've seen some developments, like there are some electric vehicle charging points. They're welcome, but they're a drop in the ocean. There aren't nearly enough of them. We really need to get a network of them if we're actually going to drive the kind of change in vehicle ownership that we want to see, that is going to help us to cut emissions. And yes, we have done some action to try to stem the losses of some of the bus services in the last year or so, but all we've done is reduced it a bit. You know, the number of bus services has been cut pretty badly in recent years, including in my ward. And we've heard recently, that part of the problem has been the inefficient way that Cardiff Bus has been run. The new managing director is hopefully going to try and sort that out. But on your watch, on the Labour watch, we've ended up having to axe services because they couldn't make ends meet, and that's because the bus company wasn't being run as well as it could. So all too often we find out that there is great rhetoric and we see lots of very fine words in this plan, but the reality often fails to live up to it. We need something that has more ambition. You declared a climate emergency. Really demonstrate to us that you are taking that seriously and that you're going to address it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brim. I think some colleagues are in danger of becoming dangerously animated. Focus, in through the nose, out through the mouth, and reflect. What do we hear from the leader of the Welsh National Party, Councillor Keith Parry?
Well, it gives me pleasure to address you for the first time as leader of the Welsh National Party in this council. And I also congratulate the Labour Party on its 120th birthday, if that's today. We will remember that Keir Hardie was one of the first Labour MPs elected in Merthyr, who was a firm supporter of Welsh Home Rule and Welsh independence. In those days, the Labour Party supported Welsh independence, so we'd be having no more talk of continued austerity imposed by a government in London, because the government in London would have no say in the administration of this city or this country. So, austerity has stopped, so they say, but it hasn't. The government in London has got plenty of money to spend on HS2, which is of no benefit whatsoever to the Welsh economy or people in Wales. But Welsh taxpayers will pay £5 billion towards the cost of it. We also had the discovery that £200 million has been paid by the Welsh Government back to the London Government over transport and other matters. It is incredible that people believe in the union with England is a good thing for Wales. It's time we fought for independence for Wales. We can govern this country far better than Boris Johnson or Corbyn or anybody else. We need a free Wales.
Settle down, please.
Anyway, I suppose we want to say something about the corporate plan. By and large, the corporate plan is, there's a lot of people doing the best they can in the circumstances in which they are. As for resilient transport, well, if you ask the people in North West Cardiff who have to come down the A4119 through Llantrissant, they don't see any resilient transport plan whatsoever. What they say is delays and chaos going on and on and on for 2 years now, well, the new developments in the northwest of Cardiff are built. And we have the other bugbear we have. We apparently are becoming part of a greater Bristol. A strong corporate group of 8 authorities, we are called. Well, I can tell you, from many years ago, the experience of building the A55 in the north of this country was that it sucked jobs and money out of the country. You get involved in rich cities across the border, you think you're going to bring wealth to this country. You're not. It will suck wealth out. We should be looking for
could you wind up, please, Councillor?
Between here and the north of our country, not across the border.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parry. And finally, Councillor Williams.
Well, thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to put on record my thanks and support to the thousands of council officers in Cardiff working to make Cardiff a great city. However, those officers are being failed by politicians in power at Cardiff Council, and that has been, for the last 8 years, Cardiff Labour. Now, Labour councillors have stood up and said we need to do more to help poor communities in Cardiff. You do not help the poor in Cardiff by having an inflation-busting council tax increase year upon year, 200% since devolution. Now let's have a little look at your key performance indicators. They are really, really bad. So your target is only 75% of Cardiff Council taxpayers will be satisfied with council services. It should be higher. Councillor Merry talks about how we want a child rights respecting city. Absolutely, Councillor Merry. So why is your target only 60% of schools that are bronze, silver or gold rights respecting schools? It should be higher. And then become a dementia friendly and age friendly city. A great initiative. But why is your target to have only 80 businesses committed towards becoming dementia friendly? It is absolutely disgraceful, and you are constantly failing the people and communities of our great city. Now let's talk about transport and clean air. Your target is to have a 46.8% target of sustainable transport modes, but you've previously told us you're doing above that. What is it? I don't really think you know your own figures. Right. We are failing citizens and communities across Cardiff because this council is led by Cardiff Labour. Where are the targets about improving the quality of design and builds for new homes in our city? You are failing those who are purchasing homes from unfair developer practices. In my community of Pontprenai and Old St Mellons, this Labour Council should be doing far more to stand up for working people who want to live and work in Cardiff. We need to ensure that we have homes that are fit for the future. Where are those targets in this document? They are not there. Labour are failing Cardiff and they are failing Wales. They've been in government since 1999 at Cardiff Bay and since 2012 here at Cardiff Council. In the words of Spider-Man, with power comes great responsibility. You have the power, you have the opportunity to make a change and make a difference, and the people of Cardiff are being let down. You need to improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Thank you, Councillor. Settle down, please, friends. Settle down, please, friends. We'd like to invite the leader to respond. Your 3 minutes, please, leader.
I fear responding to all of those points in 3 minutes may be beyond me, but I'll do my best. I mean, I think there is certainly some confusion in the chamber between what a corporate plan is and what a local development plan is. Certainly when people go on quite obsessively with architecture, and interesting to hear Councillor Williams talk about wanting places for people to live and work in Cardiff, because as far as everything I've heard from him, he doesn't want any new houses built anywhere in Cardiff, and has consistently failed to back an LDP at any opportunity. Likewise, Councillor Boyle, I think, demonstrates quite eloquently why you campaign in poetry and govern in prose. I have to say it's fairly selective poetry as well, if I may say so. Because if you want to look at where the architecture is, well, you look at the LDP, an LDP which your party singularly failed to deliver. You referenced actually East Tyndall Street as being monoliths. When I first moved to Cardiff in 2008, halfway through the last Lib Dem administration, Tyndall Street was a gravel car park. That's what our Cardiff capital city was like when your party ran it. And you make great play of the inequality gap. And I think we can all acknowledge significant concern about the growing inequality gap, which is not unique to Cardiff. It's happening across the country. And think tanks, institutions from the Resolution Foundation to the IFS confirmed what is driving that inequality gap is changes to the benefit system, which started when your party were in government with the Conservative Party in 2010. Councillor Parry, I'm not sure how quite to respond to you. Let me just say on the Western Gateway. You make great play about Wales getting what it needs, and I totally agree with you on that point. You look at the impact HS2 will have on Cardiff, and Cardiff and Bristol will be the two most impacted cities in terms of disbenefits economically. So why shouldn't we cooperate with our closest major city to make sure that we get the investment that we need to this part of the United Kingdom? And then I'm so grateful to Councillor Henshaw for referencing the recent report on health inequality, because it does in fact tie to the questions around sickness absence. Professor Michael Marmot said in response to that report, austerity has taken a significant toll on equity and health, and it is likely to continue to do so. If you ask me if that is the reason for the worsening health picture, I'd say it's highly likely that it is responsible for life expectancy flatlining, people's health deteriorating, and the widening of health inequalities. So if you look at sickness absence, yes, we've made great progress on short-term sickness, with a reduction in 10% in short-term sickness absence rates over the last 5 years. But small wonder, given that context, that we still have 72% of people who are ill in the council ill on long-term sick for non-work-related stress. We're committed to getting into grips with that. We've made that commitment through the scrutiny committees. There are detailed directive plans which will help get us into it. But let's not pretend again this is a problem in isolation.
Can you start winding up, please? Just over 3 minutes.
Yes, I mean, in terms of maintenance backlog, there's been significant progress. Actually, if you looked at the 2015 to 2020 disposal plan, that's unlocked £40 million of capital receipts to invest back into our buildings, a £6.3 million reduction in the running costs of council buildings during that time. And tourism numbers, for the last 2 years our figures are available, figures have actually increased by 2 million to record levels of 22 million people coming to visit our great city. Cardiff is a great place to live, it's a great place to work, and it will continue to be so under a Labour Council. I commend the corporate reply.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williams.
I have a point of personal explanation, Lord Mayor. The leader of the council said that I did not support house development. That is an inaccurate statement. I support sustainable, high-quality development with the appropriate infrastructure in place. I'd like the leader to withdraw that statement, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Thank you. Don't wind him up, Councillor Goodway, please. Please, I appeal to your better nature. Come on now. Look, we're having none of this today, I tell you. Now, right. I'm now going to hand over to the officers to start the vote on the reference back.
Councillor. We start again. Councillors, we will now vote on the reference back, which was proposed by Councillor Robson and seconded by Councillor Cowan. All those in favour of the reference back, please press 2. All those against the reference back, please press 3. If you wish to abstain, please press 4. I will start the vote now. The reference back is lost. Councillors, we will now vote on the recommendations in the report. If you are in favour of the report, okay. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. Right. We will now vote on the recommendations in the report. All those in favour of the report, please press 2. All those against the report, please press 3. If you wish to abstain, please press 4. I will start the vote now.
We shall now have a 20-minute intermission before we come back for the budget. Hello friends, welcome back. Item 9 is the Budget Proposals 2020-21. The declaration of members' interests made under Item 2 have been recorded in relation to this item, and there is no requirement to declare the interests again. This item is to consider the Cabinet proposals as set out in budget lines 2020-21. Appendix 4C of this report is exempt information under Schedule 12A of Part 4, Paragraph 14 and Part 5, Paragraph 21 of the Local Government Act 1972. Should a member indicate that they wish to discuss any of the information contained in this document, we'll take those speakers last, so that we can move that the public be excluded from the meeting whilst we discuss. We've received 3 alternative proposals to the budget report, and the necessary statutory officer's advice is set out under each of the amendments on the amendment sheet before you today. It is therefore not my intention to allow questions to be put to the statutory officers regarding the proposals before the Council. I call on the Cabinet Member for Finance, Modernisation and Performance, Councillor Weaver, to formally move the Cabinet proposals. You have 10 minutes. Councillor Weaver.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to be speaking tonight to propose the Labour budget for 2020-21, the third of this administration. This is an ambitious but responsible budget designed to deliver for our city's future. Before I start, and so I definitely don't run out of time, I want to thank a number of people. Firstly, all the officers and members who've worked on this over many months, the scrutiny committees, audit committees, school budget forum and members across the chamber and through my group. In particular, I'd like to thank our Section 151 officer and the team of officers in finance whose work toward this has been thorough and superb. We recognise that the timetable was delayed this year because of the general election at the end of last year, and we only received the final settlement this week. I'm pleased to say there were no changes to the aggregate external finance from the provisional settlement, and I'm pleased to say to members as well that we can expect to be back to the usual timetable for next year's budget. At the start, I want to be clear that despite a better than expected settlement, austerity has not ended, and this was not easy. In order to close a gap of nearly £18 million, we have put forward proposals that rely on savings, including income generation, a council tax rise and appropriate use of reserves, pulling on the levers that we have to balance our budget. Whilst the £10 million of savings is lower than in most recent years, they follow a decade in which we've had to make the best part of £250 million of savings. That is not easy. We're pleased that we've been able to ease the pressure on schools by only seeking a 0.5% efficiency saving, which gives our schools a higher percentage cash increase than the council overall has received, £10.4 million net growth this year. We've used £750,000 from reserves in line with our strategy last year, taken from an earmarked reserve designed for this purpose. But yes, council tax also forms part of our proposals. It's always a difficult decision. We propose a rise of 4.5%, equivalent to £1.05p a week on a Band D property. This is likely to be one of the lower rises in Wales this year, but a necessary part of delivering a responsible budget whilst allowing for investment in key areas. I want now to draw members' attention to the medium-term financial plan and the ongoing uncertainty and challenges we still face. Last month, the UK Chancellor, not the current one, the one who resigned because he felt he was being asked to do something that was not in the national interest, Sajid Javid, asked all Westminster departments for a further 5% of cuts. Now, we don't know the impact that would have on Welsh funding, and we don't know if the new Chancellor will follow through on it, or if he will still be Chancellor by the budget next month. But this does not sound like we can rely on the end of austerity from Westminster. We also have Brexit, where the impact on funding for public services is unknown, and we're still awaiting the outcome of national negotiations on the pay award for staff, which could be higher than councils are currently budgeting for. If you look at the medium-term financial plan, you will see our current working shows a budget gap over the next 4 years of £74 million. That is why, whilst our proposals are ambitious and we provide some welcome investment, realignment and areas of growth in key services, our budget must always be set on a sound, long-term, resilient base. The budget is the bedrock, the foundations on which a council can build its policy agenda. The stronger your foundations, the more confidence you can have to build above them. A brighter and better future for our services relies on this. A prudent, resilient budget does not undermine ambition, it underpins it. The corporate plan earlier set out a positive and ambitious agenda for Cardiff, and this budget will enable us to deliver it. But with the known unknowns we still face in the decade ahead, and the years of real-term cuts we faced in the decade behind us, every decision must be based on a budget that is deliverable, sustainable and long-term. That is why I will not be encouraging members to support the alternative budget proposals before Council tonight. I'll listen to the debate before commenting on every aspect to hear what members wish to emphasise, but all three proposals undermine the financial resilience of this Council and increase the risk this authority faces. Briefly, the Cardiff West Independent National Party group reduced the contingency budget by £1.5 million, which is premature given the risks. Sorry, I will correct that, the Welsh National Party, thank you. Which is premature given the risks we still face. We do, however, hope you will still support our responsible and sustainable planned investment in youth services. The Lib Dem proposals, in addition to reducing the contingency budgets with the same risk, also propose use of our already low general reserves, which I caution against as they are at minimum levels right now. I understand the intention behind your proposals and hope you will appreciate the investment relating to a greener future in this budget and welcome the One Planet strategy that will come to Council this spring. The Tories' proposals have the greatest risk, a substantial risk to the Council, which could seriously jeopardise the overall financial resilience of the Council, according to the financial implications. The wholesale removal of the contingency budget, alongside some generalised income generation targets, which would come on top of the 2.5 million of detailed income generation targets we have set, primarily to fund a lower council tax rise, seems particularly unwise in face of the difficult and uncertain years ahead. And it's not what Welsh Conservatives are doing where they are in power. Tory-controlled Monmouthshire is proposing a 4.95% increase in council tax. In coalition in Conwy, Tories are proposing 7%. In coalition in Wrexham, it's 6.95%. You can perhaps see the difference in perspective when in opposition as opposed to power. And that reminds me of Councillor Williams' earlier slightly surreal Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility. You can tell his party are far from power here in Cardiff because their proposals are far from responsible. I am, however, pleased that none of the groups have proposed tonight any changes to the capital programme. Our prudent and affordable borrowing for long-term investment in schools, transport, housing and tackling climate change is necessary, and I'm glad we all support that. So, whilst in the interest of the longer term I cannot agree with the alternative proposals, I hope we can all agree on the priority areas of growth and investment that we are making, which reflect the priorities of the public shown in the consultation in Appendix 6A of the report. There is a lot to celebrate and be proud of in this Labour budget. This budget underpins our fantastic commitment to build 1,000 council houses by 2022 and 1,000 more beyond. It underpins the biggest school building programme in Wales and our additional investment in the current schools estate. It underpins our huge investment in green energy, LED streetlights, public transport and cycle lanes, flood defences and drainage, all helping the response to the climate emergency. I'm delighted that it has allowed us to increase funding for youth services for the first time in years. £201,000 in the base budget and £250,000 as one-off spend as well. We will invest further in our future generations, not only with the £10.4 million net extra to schools, but also in base budget funding for Cardiff Commitment and child-friendly cities. And we will continue to support the most vulnerable in Cardiff, with £10 million extra revenue for social services and £750,000 extra each year in the Capital Programme for Disabled Adaptation Grants. There's also £150,000 education support for children looked after, again in the base budget. And with additional money, over £3 million for waste, recycling and street cleaning, we can deliver for the frontline services that all our citizens use. So this budget focuses heavily on the future. It underpins the ambitions this administration has set out and built upon since 2017. These are Labour values, Cardiff Labour values put into practice. You might call it prudence for a purpose. That may have gone out of fashion at a UK level in recent years, but it is the only responsible way to grow and improve our city. So to conclude, for a budget that balances our long-term financial stability with investment in our key services and our future generations, I urge members to vote for our Labour budget tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I understand Councillor Thomas is seconding the proposals. Would you like to speak now, Councillor Thomas?
I would, Lord Mayor. I rise to second this budget, and so doing, can I start by paying fulsome tribute to my friend and colleague, Councillor Weaver, for all the hard work that he has led, probably for the last 9 months, in getting us to where we are today. Thank you, Chris. Colleagues, earlier this evening, we approved a corporate plan that sets out our priorities for the next 3 years, and this budget is about fully funding those priorities. And like the corporate plan, it is a budget that looks to the future, a budget for the next generation. It is a budget that delivers for children and young people, investing huge amounts into schools and education. It is a budget that delivers for the economy and, crucially, accelerates Cardiff's response to the climate emergency, ensuring that future generations can look back and say that this was a budget that was delivered for them. It is also a budget that delivers for the most vulnerable in our communities, funding the best quality care for those in need of council support. This budget was developed alongside the corporate plan to ensure that we fully fund our capital ambition priorities. Councillor Weaver provided a compelling and comprehensive articulation of our budget, which I do not wish to repeat. But I make no apologies for re-emphasising that we are investing nearly £300 million into renovating or rebuilding our schools, £250 million to tackle the housing crisis, with one of the biggest council house building programmes in Britain. Looking further ahead, we're investing over £100 million in climate action measures, with the bulk of these funds going to transforming our public transport system, generating renewable energy and enhancing our flood defence systems. And despite the best efforts of those who would try to convince us otherwise, my administration fully understands that austerity hasn't gone away. Now, it's true that the settlement from the Welsh Government was better than expected, but even so, we still faced a budget gap of around £70 million. After over a decade of crippling austerity, there remains no end to the financial uncertainty. We've already identified savings of almost £250 million over the past 10 years because of the UK Government austerity agenda. And only this week, a major report concluded that this austerity agenda has, for the first time in several generations, led to a reduction in life expectancy in the population. Austerity always was a political ideology and never an economic necessity. And that is why capital ambition is fundamentally focused on tackling inequality, using every lever at our disposal, and heaven knows I'd want some more levers, to make sure that austerity does not scar the face of our city. How typical, therefore, that when offered a choice between repairing some of the damage caused by austerity or locking in the effects of that austerity for the long term, the Conservative Party amendment destructively chooses the latter option. Instead, my administration begins the process of rebuilding. It does so prudently, not like the other two amendments that raid reserves and contingency funds, but purposefully and systematically, with above-inflation increases in day-to-day spending on our schools and social services, and massive targeted investment in areas such as youth services and cleansing. As I have said before many times, my administration was elected on a commitment that everybody who lives in Cardiff, irrespective of faith, wealth, race or gender, should be able to contribute to and benefit from the city's success. Now, for so many of our residents, they need our help to make sure that happens. Our Capital Ambition programme and this budget that supports it is designed to make sure that does happen. I so second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will now call in turn the proposers and seconders of the alternative proposals. Councillor Gavin Hill-John, will you formally propose the Conservative alternative proposals marked as Amendment A on the amendment sheet? You have 5 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I'll endeavour to start us off on this debate in a positive manner. So before I begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our Section 151 officer and his team for their hard work in preparing this year's budget. I'd also like to thank our dedicated officer for his support in enabling us to prepare our alternative budget. And also to thank the Cabinet member for his openness and willingness to engage across the Chamber. Looking at the budget this Council has prepared, I feel there's a sense of déjà vu. We have been here before in the last 3 years. And as I said last year, there is a clear desire to increase the amount of income generated by the Council and also a drive for efficiency. And I sincerely hope that, as in the last few years, we can continue with a positive and constructive debate regarding the finances of the City of Cardiff. With that in mind, we have formulated our budget thinking about the taxpayer first. Because we know there is no such thing as public money, there is only taxpayers' money. And I want us to do the best we can for the working families of Cardiff. And as such, we firmly believe that we should strive to deliver a council tax rise below 2% and use every opportunity we have to deliver that. It's clear from this budget that steps have been taken to improve the commercial viability of the council, but I would like to call your attention to a recent training event most of us attended regarding the safeguarding of children, because the facilitator of this event used one sentence that struck a chord with me when he said, "We are in the business of social care." And that got me thinking, because 2 years ago I challenged this council to be more commercial, to be more businesslike. And I met with some resistance. If I remember, Councillor Goodway informed me that unlike a business, we do not stop serving people when they can no longer pay. And I'd like to thank Councillor Goodway for those words, because it has helped me to understand why I am so passionate about the finances of this city, and why I actually think that if we were more businesslike, we could do more for the residents of this city, and we could be there for them when they need us. In the business world, we have shareholders. We have people reliant on us making a profit. And as such, we drive every single day to be the best that we can be in terms of efficiency and income generation. What is the difference in the council environment? We may not have shareholders, but we have individuals that need our help. So surely we have a duty to generate as much as we possibly can, so when those in need knock on our door, we can help them. Therefore, I see it as our duty in this chamber to create the leanest, most efficient organisation we possibly can, and one that exploits every single opportunity to generate an income and drive efficiency so we can serve those that need us most. A quick example of efficiency that I think we might be able to work on. As in previous years, I've taken the opportunity to ask my constituents how they feel about paying 4% more in council tax. Clearly they're not amused, but we are where we are. But the message they came back to me loud and clear was, actually, that's not a problem if we get value for money. And they said to me that, last year it was bins, this year it's actually potholes. You have an example in our ward where a pothole has been repaired 7 times in 1 year. That's not efficiency. And that's something we need to drive, and we need to work hard on every day to change that. The budget before us this evening, I believe, does go some way towards doing that, but it can do more. We can be more aspirational. We can be more ambitious. In fact, if we push the boat out, I believe we could deliver real capital ambition. Our amendment goes some way to doing more. To be honest, if I was on my own doing this, I would have pushed it even further, because I think we can generate more and we can be more commercial. My colleagues will be going into some of the finer detail of our proposal during the next few moments. As a quick aside, Councillor Bradbury, when we talk about income generation, I spent 3 hours in St David's Hall on Saturday night, and I'll be the first to donate to a Sponsor the Seat campaign in order to improve the effectiveness of that great building, because it wasn't the most comfortable of experiences. We have opportunities like that if we think creatively. I firmly believe that we have the best opportunity we've ever had to deliver lasting change and deliver a lasting impact for the residents of Cardiff. So let us really look at all of the ideas that are put on the table this evening and see if we can gather them all together and make a real difference for the people that need us most, the residents of Cardiff. And I encourage you to support our amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. And Amendment A is seconded by Councillor Robson. Would you like to speak now, Councillor?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise to second the Conservative alternative budget and echo thanks, particularly to Mark and Chris for their help. Last year I stated in this chamber that austerity was starting to end. You laughed. Well, the Office for National Statistics estimated the UK employment rate at a record high of 76.5%, and the annual growth in regular pay was up by another 1.8%. We are in the closing stages of austerity. Even the Welsh Government has increased the grant to this council by 4.1%, for once actually passing on the money from Westminster direct to local government in Wales. One of the highest increases has come to Cardiff this time, and that's the reason why other authorities cited by Hugh and Chris have had to go for higher council tax rises than we're proposing, because their grants are much lower than Cardiff's, and they struggle much more. But what does this Labour administration do with that extra money? It hits Cardiff taxpayers with an inflation-busting, pay increase wrecking, hard work shattering council tax rise of 4.5%. That level of council tax rise is immoral, when you remember that the first £3 million of that taxpayers' money, their money, not ours, will be used for the Budget Contingency Fund. This is now year 7 of this fund, a slush fund, taking the total wasted to £24 million. And if you consider the majority of proposals in your budget are low-risk green, and that the Council's total usable reserves are £85.9 million, then there is no justification for this fund anymore. For this fund to stay the same and not even reduce a bit in this circumstance this year shows a lack of financial discipline. Yet, it is again down to Cardiff Conservatives to take a prudent approach, and we have a considered alternative that will lead to a tax rise of just 1.9%. In our proposals, we would introduce a sickness absence saving of £270,000. We talked briefly before, but the level of sickness absence is extremely high across the council, and sadly peaks in a couple of directorates. That is now a nettle that must be grasped. And yes, difficult decisions on that will have to be made, but it's unfair to Cardiff residents to keep kicking the can down the road. Our proposals also look at income generation, and we do acknowledge progress by the Cabinet in generating income in this city. New ways of working that was never part of the golden thread previously have appeared. We will take credit for some of it. Several of Councillor Hill-John's previous suggestions in budgets have appeared a year or two on. But there is more that could be done, and we start by proposing an additional £150,000 for it. Last year, a lot of the focus on the budget was on bus service subsidy. We recognise the importance of buses to getting people moving around this city, and we've thrown in an extra £60,000 as part of the efforts on that. But it's just a shame that there is still no bus station for those buses to use. And in concluding, this bus station is a huge missed opportunity, but this budget is also a huge missed opportunity, with a huge council tax rise, an unexpected better funded settlement, a far, far lower quantum of resources needed to be found, and yet no let-up in the tax rise. This administration talks regularly about a southern arc of deprivation, yet actually what they're also creating, starting in the west of the city, going right across the north of the city, is an arc of taxation. Cardiff residents are tolerant, hard-working people, but when you hit them in the pocket, they notice. They remember. They vote. And is it any wonder that Labour lost all 4 of last year's council by-elections? Well, I believe an 80... Can I just say...
Councillor Jones.
80 seat majority, Councillor Jones.
Settle down, please. Settle down, please.
Lord Mayor, to finish, this tax rise is immoral, and I use that word deliberately. And if you support the Labour budget today, you will find that Cardiff residents will remember, and we will make sure that they remember, and there is an alternative way. I urge you to support the Conservative amendment, otherwise come next year, come the year after, Cardiff residents will find that there is no money left.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Berman, will you formally propose the Liberal Democrat alternative proposals marked as Amendment B on the amendment sheet? You have 5 minutes, please, Councillor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I am pleased to propose the Liberal Democrat alternative budget. And like my Conservative colleagues, I'd like to start by paying tribute to the officers for their work on the budget and for helping us prepare our alternative. Now, when I got the email, I think it was a week or two ago, to say that the administration's budget was now available, do you know, I actually knew what the council tax rise was going to be before I even opened the papers, because I said to myself, oh, it's going to be somewhere between 4.5% and 5%. I know that. I don't actually have to read them to find out. And lo and behold, it was 4.5%. What a surprise that this council, this administration, always goes for, let's try and set it as high as we think we can get away with. Maybe above 5% is too much, but we'll go as near as we can get there. Now, but when you look at it, last year, the increase in aggregate external finance that this council got was just 0.9%. So you got an extra £2.2 million after a technical adjustment. This year, the increase in aggregate external finance was 4.1%. That was an extra £18.5 million that you had to spend. So this year, you've had 16 million extra than you had last year to spend, and yet you still want to clobber the residents in Cardiff with a council tax rise that's more than twice the rate of inflation. The Band D rate will now be £1,538.29. In 2012, it was £1,105.98. That's an increase of about £430 in 8 years. 39% increase over 8 years. Now, earlier today, Councillor Thomas tweeted about being proud to present a budget based on Labour values. But, Councillor Thomas, amongst the values you listed, you forgot the value of putting up the council tax by as much as you think you can get away with. And don't forget, too, that council tax is in many ways a regressive tax, with poorer households having to pay proportionately more than richer households. But the question I suppose we have to ask is, are residents actually getting value for money from this Labour administration? So let's have a look at your track record. Well, I'm afraid it's not good, and the current financial year is no better. If you look at some of the detail, there are 3 major realignments. 3 services that have gone massively over the budgets we set them last year. An extra £4.85 million for children's services, an extra £1.5 million for adult services. But the one I would single out is the extra £2.9 million for waste management. And that is a sad indictment of the way this administration has been running the waste department. We know it's had problems in the last few years, but going so much over budget in a service where demand is much more easy to predict than it is in social services, well, frankly, smacks of gross mismanagement. And I think it also shows a lack of cabinet scrutiny of the waste service. But you can guarantee the current cabinet member in charge won't accept any liability for what's happened under his watch. But of course he should. For too long, this council has been working on the basis that it can just get by even if it fails to deliver savings. You're repeatedly allowing yourselves to be bailed out by the contingency fund. And I've previously argued that just encourages services to be lazy in delivering savings because they know that fund's there for them to dip into. And this year you're keeping it even though you have assessed the savings that you're putting forward as being a lot less risky than last year. So our alternative says that we can reduce that contingency fund, and we can use some of that to set a more reasonable rise in council tax, and we can use some of it together with some other quite modest savings to invest in some additional priorities. So we want to see more done to further green this city. So a fund that could produce things like more green walls, more tree cover. Let's use that and celebrate and enhance what has made this city great. Let's turn this city into one that genuinely puts the environment first. We've also got proposals for a new demand-led bus service that could build on the existing VEST community transport services, but maybe not just for those who are elderly or suffer a disability, something that could help plug the gap in communities where they've lost bus services. I started with a prediction. I'm going to finish with one. I'm sure that as we get nearer to the next local elections in a couple of years' time, that's when we might just see the council tax rise coming down a little bit. But don't please make the people of Cardiff pay now for your election gimmicks later. please support the Liberal Democrat alternative budget.
Thank you. Thank you. That will do. Thank you. Councillor Boyle, you're seconding Amendment B. Would you like to speak now?
No, I'm reserved my right to speak for
No problem. No problem. Councillor McAvoy, will you formally propose the Welsh National Party alternative proposals? Before you get up, I've been informed by officers that technically speaking, as you're not a group leader or a finance spokesman, you should really have 3 minutes. But I think that would be churlish and pretty unfair, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes as well. So.
I thought I was finance spokesperson. First of all, I hope it won't take 5 minutes. First of all, thanks to the officials. Ian especially was very helpful in helping us put together our amendment. This is not a budget. This is the first time that I'm speaking on behalf of the Welsh National Party. I applied Genedlaethol Cymru at Cardiff Council, so I'm very pleased to do that. Councillor Weaver spoke of national interest at the beginning, as if there were one national interest in the UK. The reality is that there are several competing national interests within the United Kingdom. Take airport passenger duty, for example, that we're not allowed to have control over in Wales because Bristol Airport doesn't like it. So a medium-sized English city vetoes the right of people in Wales to impose a tax on airport passenger duty. As I said, this is not a budget. This is simply an amendment. It's a very simple amendment. The reason we've done that is because we want to give everybody an opportunity to join us in the Welsh National Party and vote for the future. This is about the future. Wales, our children, our youth, they're all of our tomorrows. And there's a very simple choice here to either put £3 million extra into extra reserves, the reserves are already there, or we can begin to rebuild the youth service, which has been decimated in the last 8 years. I hear that you are rebuilding it. When we left office, my colleagues across the way there were 22 council-run, council-funded youth centres in this city. There are now two. And sticking plasters of volunteers coming together and running operations for a few hours just to take children off the street does not compensate for a professionally run youth service. So what we're saying is, simply in this amendment, nothing else. I'm not commenting on any other part of the budget. What we're looking at is a simple amendment, not to put £3 million extra into reserves, but simply to invest in the youth service and give our kids a chance in the future. I think Councillor Berman is correct, because this council tax rise of 4.5% is extremely cynical. £3 million is not needed because you're putting it into reserves, as I've just said. So what we will see, on the back of people paying council tax, struggling to pay council tax, is that nearer the election there will be pledges from the Labour group and the council tax rise will not be as large. And I find that reprehensible. So there's a challenge here to every single councillor in this room, especially let's say the allegedly more left-leaning Labour members. I do say allegedly because I find them fairly right-wing, to be honest. I think that there are quite a lot here who would qualify as maybe outward-facing radically left, but actually fairly right-wing, frankly. Choice: fund the youth services for the future, or put £3 million into reserves. It's up to you. What we want to do is clear. We want to support the future. We want to give our kids a chance. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I understand that the Welsh National Party proposals, which are Amendment C on the sheet, are being seconded by Councillor Parry. Would you like to speak now, Councillor? Okay, no problem. The budget procedure rules allow for 45 speakers in total, allocated proportionally in accordance with Rule 5 and as agreed by party group whips. Anyone wishing to be involved in the debate can indicate during the debate by using the button on the console so their name is put on a list and can be logged against their group allocation. Please note that providing the green light is illuminated on your microphone, you are on the list to speak. There's not all names are displayed on the board in the council chamber. Before I open the debate, I would encourage members to structure their contributions to ensure the opportunity for debate is fair, respects the members' code of conduct and keeps within the allocated time. I now invite debate on the budget and the amendments, starting with Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In the ideal world, none of us want to see an increase in council tax, but we don't live in the ideal world. It is important to point out that austerity is not over and we still need to make £10 million of savings on top of the £225 million over the last 10 years. This Labour administration cares deeply about the most vulnerable people who live in this wonderful city. This budget will provide £10.4 million extra for school delegated budgets, just over £10 million for social services supporting the most vulnerable children and adults, an extra £201,000 into the base budget for youth services, extra money for street cleansing and recycling, extra £782,000 for roads and pavements, plus £150,000 for lines and signs, £225,000 extra for flood and drainage works, extra £100,000 for parks and playgrounds, and nearly £500,000 in the capital programme for playgrounds, an extra £300,000 for additional deep cleansing, and £6.3 million for flood defence and coastal erosion. It is important to point out what some of the other Tory council authorities are doing, which Chris Weaver touched on. Monmouthshire Council 4.95% increase, Conway Council 7%, Powys Council 5%, Wrexham 6.95%. All Tory councils, I repeat. This budget will also deliver schools of the future. The Banby Schools programme, which is estimated at £250 million, will also deliver a brand new Fitzallen High School in my own ward of Canton at an approximate cost of £64 million. It will be the most expensive school ever built in Wales. I will be supporting the council tax increase of 4.5% because this budget will help and support the poorest in our community and will give our children the best opportunities in life. Councillor Gavin Hill-John said that taxpayers want value for money. This budget is value for money. By providing our children and the most vulnerable a brighter future, I urge you all to support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bradbury, it's your moment.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and it's an absolute pleasure to stand in support of this Labour budget. And I congratulate my friend and colleague, Councillor Weaver, on his excellent speech. And as he stated in his speech, this is a budget that puts the investment that we need to continue delivering our exciting corporate plan. Now, Lord Mayor, it would be wrong for me not to stand here and challenge the alternative budget proposals put forward by the Tories and the Liberal Democrats today. The Conservatives, well, the Tories, if it irritates you, I keep saying it. The Tories have done what they always do. Short-term proposals that aim to grab the headlines, but ultimately would leave this authority at risk for the medium to long term. It's always a good headline to say you're reducing the increase in the rise of council taxes. However, as other Tory authorities across Wales understand that this is not sustainable in the long term. And that is why Conway and other councils are going higher than we are today.
Councillor Williams.
Also, you've tried to balance your budget with unspecific income and fees. It's almost like a stealth tax that no one can see, but you are doing that. And that is not sustainable, and you can really see that no serious work whatsoever has been gone into this proposal, and it is essentially a political tactic which the people of Cardiff will see through and have consistently seen through over the last 30 odd years in this city, which you have never been able to win or govern in here in Cardiff. The Lib Dems here today have tried to promote their green credentials with their proposal. However, whilst we accept and are planning to increase tree cover in the city, it is difficult to take their proposal seriously given who's moving them. Councillor Berman, when leader of this council in 2009, drove through proposals to fell several trees and to build an access road in Butte Park. He said at the time, we have got to remember that Butte Park was developed as a private garden for the Marquis of Bute. So understandably, it was not designed with lots of ways in and out. It wasn't designed for mass access by the general population. He went on to criticise those who were against those plans, saying, if we were talking about something that was completely the natural environment, I might understand. But a park is a man-made spot. Someone planned it out. Somebody decided something's going there. All we are saying is that the current layout doesn't meet the current requirements. Now, Lord Mayor, I understand people often go on a long political journey. But the Liberal Democrats cannot seriously want us to believe that Councillor Berman has gone from Cardiff Council's chief lumberjack to Swampy in 10 years. Lord Mayor, Councillor Boyle should make that point when he talks about the built environment, like he did earlier, criticising this administration. Lord Mayor, this budget is an investment in our future. More money for schools, more money for adult and children's services, more money for parks, more money to tackle climate change and our flood defences, more money for street cleansing, more money for street scene, a music officer, and backing the music board on their signature event. This, Lord Mayor, is a budget that is putting Cardiff Labour values and general Labour values into action for the betterment of all our citizens, and I urge you all to support it today.
Thank you. Councillor Hudson. You certainly can. You certainly can. I'm fully behind you, Councillor. And I tend to chastise councillors, like you, Councillor. I've seen you out of the corner of my eye, modelling poor behaviour. So there we are. There we are. Can I please invite Councillor Burke-Davy to speak?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Like a number of you in this room and across our city, I'm not Cardiff born and Cardiff bred, but when I die, I'll be Cardiff dead. I've called this city home for 10 years and I don't see that changing. I'm proud to live here and I'm proud to represent Cardiff as a councillor. As we've heard tonight in this and the corporate plan debates, this administration is working for and investing in Cardiff. I ask you to support this budget. It is resilient for the future but also invests in key areas such as social housing and education. There are people in this room who are going to quibble over the percentage of council tax rise, but there are Tory councils throughout Wales and the rest of the UK who have increased their council tax to a higher rate and are offering their residents less in return. Conwy 7%, Monmouth 4.95%, Powys 5%, Wrexham 6.95%. But the people of Cardiff did not trust the opposition party's track record of their time spent in power. They did not trust your broken promises or values. It was Cardiff Labour that was entrusted to do the hard job, and it was Cardiff Labour that has been entrusted to protect libraries, which we've committed to do once again, spend on the biggest school building programme ever in Wales, investing in youth services, building 1,000 council homes by 2022 and preparing for 1,000 more, devoting an extra £10 million in social services to support the most vulnerable in our community. In the recent election, there were many rumours that austerity is over. This is not the case. This council has been asked to make more than £10 million worth of of savings this year alone, and there is still £74 million budget gap in the next 4 years. That figure is huge, incomprehensible even. Imagine what we could achieve with the adequate level of funding, what start we could give to future generations. I'm sure you've all read the Social Prosperity Network report, Social Prosperity for the Future. This report sets out when you focus on basic services such as housing, transport and communications, you are far more effective at driving down the cost of living but also addressing inequality. Money spent on basic services, the same services that people expect of councils, such as this council, are fundamental building blocks for life, prosperity, community cohesion and achieving inclusivity. By refusing to appropriately fund local government, the UK government in Westminster is intent on eradicating social mobility and opportunity. This Labour-led council has said no. Councillor Thomas made it a clear pledge in our capital ambition that we would tackle poverty and reduce inequality. This budget is helping us achieve that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Keith Jones.
Lord Mayor. I rise to support this socialist budget of the Cardiff Labour Group and absolutely delighted to. Councillor Robson, my good friend, he said that austerity is over. Well, I'll give you a warning, Councillor Robson, for your own sake. Remember Chancellor Sajid Javid, he declared the end of austerity in September, and look what happened to him. So be very careful. You said about the election and we must listen to the Cardiff people. Well, let's listen to what they did in the general election, didn't they? Cardiff North, the MP it returned was Labour. Cardiff South, the MP it returned was Labour. Cardiff West, the MP it returned was Labour. Cardiff Central, the MP it returned was Labour. This is a socialist city and it will keep voting Labour because we are the last line of defence, as this budget shows, against the austerity that you inflict on our people. We've got... Not in Cardiff though, is it? It voted Labour. Lord Mayor, I'm being heckled to you. I know you like order in the chamber. Over the last 10 years, we've had 225 million taken from public services. Councillor Robson talks about immoral. That's immoral, isn't it? If you believe in your council service and public services, it's immoral to see us stripped down to nothing, isn't it? Because we are there at the front line. What about on the other side? We've got the Liberal Democrats. It's a bit like ghosts of Christmas past, isn't it? We've got there Councillor Boyle. I think he's the leader. He still is the leader at the moment, isn't he, of their group? He says there, he forgets earlier on about Nick Clegg, who inflicted this on us with his Rose Garden pact with David Cameron back in the day. And no wonder he's a bit fearful, and he gave that great speech earlier, because he's got Rodley Berman at the back, Councillor Berman, who seems to be the super forecaster. Dominic Cummings might be seeking you out as you predict the future. But we know, don't we, it's Labour that's delivering. And a colleague in the break said to me, will you reference President Johnson? And I definitely will, because I respect that colleague. And President Johnson said, poverty must not be a bar to learning, and learning must offer an escape from poverty. And I want to pick up on this budget about the Labour Party's commitment to schools. 10.4 million net extra for schools' delegated budgets. And we know, don't we, the commitment to delivering investment in our schools, 25 million for school repairs, and we know, don't we, across our city, schools are being rebuilt, and I can't wait for the day when Councillor Merry comes and ensures that Llanrumney gets itself a brand new built primary school to go with our amazing Eastern High, which serves East Cardiff. And leader, I know there's lots of talk in this building about is there reshuffles or whatever. I want you to ensure I don't want to be in the cabinet. Keep me on the front line fighting these people of austerity. I'm proud to be a backbench councillor, a socialist standing up for the red people of Cardiff.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. As we've had quite a number of speakers from the Labour group, what I am going to do is bring Councillor Sean Jenkins up the list. So if you're ready, Councillor Jenkins.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I'm sure all members wish to join me in congratulating the UK government on its fantastic management of the economy, which has resulted in a very good settlement for the Council. And things will only get better as we can all look forward to the post-Brexit boost to our economy in the coming years. But of course, many in this room still hold a grudge against greedy bankers and the government at the time for bringing our economy to its knees between 2007 and early 2010, which of course necessitated a focus on reducing an out-of-control national deficit. But as demonstrated by this Council's very own capital expenditure programme and other budget commitments, it's clear that our economy is now in a much better place. And let's just take a cursory glance at some of the Council's spending plans. The Council has recently bought the Red Dragon Centre across the road to make way for a 15,000-seat indoor arena. It's spending over £30 million on new houses this year, rising to over £60 million next year and the year after. It's pledging money towards another bus station to the west of the city. So, not content with one imaginary bus station, we'll have 2 imaginary bus stations. And despite the capital expenditure programme alone coming in at £1 billion over the next 5 years, the Labour administration still falsely alleges that austerity is crippling the Council. On the one hand, the Council has so much money it can invest in pretend bus stations, and on the other, it has no money and needs to force residents to pay more in council tax. This Labour administration seems to want to have their cake and eat it. Forget greedy bankers, Lord Mayor. It's greedy Labour people need to look out for. But the residents of Cardiff will be relieved to hear that there is another way. A way to be ambitious, bold and sensible with capital expenditure. A way to ensure the council is being run efficiently and to ensure that council tax rises become the exception, not the norm, and it starts by backing our alternative budget tonight. Our budget ensures those underperforming directorates are given the support they need, and it ensures the council finally moves into the 21st century with efficiency that rivals the private sector. So let's finally deliver the council services that residents rightly expect by backing our alternative budget tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jenkins. Before we hear from the very patient Councillor McGarry, I would like to bring in Councillor Nigel Howells if he's ready.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank Cabinet members and officers who attended our recent Economy and Culture Scrutiny meeting when we discussed the budget. As members will observe from the letter that I wrote on behalf of my committee, we didn't raise that many issues with regards to specific items that fell within our remit. Our main area of concern was in relation to the Tourist Information Centre and our concern that moving the TIC currently in the old library into St David's Hall would adversely impact on the information available to our visitors. We'll be further exploring the implications of this as part of our inquiry into tourism in Cardiff. In respect of the Economic Development Directorate, there is an ambitious programme of development and investment within the corporate plan, and members did express concern that the loss of over 16 full-time equivalent jobs from the Directorate might impact on the ability to deliver this. And in respect of adult community learning, we resolve to support the administration in any way we can to get the Welsh Government to review the expected 50% cut in funding. That's the view from the committee. From a personal point of view, a view supported by my group, whilst there is much that can be supported within this budget, it falls way short of being a budget that the residents of Cardiff deserve. Overall, we feel it is unfair to residents to have to bear a further rise in council tax, over double the rate of inflation, at a time when family budgets are increasingly under pressure and in light of the better than expected settlement from Welsh Government. Our amendment sensibly reduces this rate without proposing further cuts nor deleting any of the proposed funding to meet financial pressures. In fact, our amendment goes further and gives some real teeth to our recent climate emergency declaration by providing £500,000 of year-on-year revenue funding to invest in biodiversity initiatives, including green walls and increased tree cover in the city. It's all very well declaring a climate emergency, but we will be judged as a council on our actions, not our words. Everything we do as a council and every development and every initiative we undertake must ensure that wherever possible the climate is at the forefront of our decision making. This issue will be our number one issue for the remainder of this council term and beyond, and we will judge all future proposals that come before us on how they address this issue before giving them our support. The proposed budget, as it stands, doesn't do that. To quote Batman, everything's impossible until somebody does it. So let us be the council that does it, and by that I mean take the lead on climate change.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Howells. Thank you for waiting, Councillor McGarry.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I rise to support the Labour budget, which is prudent, fiscally responsible and affordable. The alternative budgets are not these things. Let's look at some of the things they suggest. Reducing the contingency fund at a time of great uncertainty and at a time of a predicted 74 million to be saved over the next 4 years is irresponsible. Using the general reserves is also irresponsible. Our reserves are very low as it is. They are 14.2 million. Our expenditure next year is £656 million. So 14.2 million of general reserves represents just over 2% of our expenditure for a year, which is about 8 days' worth of expenditure. That puts it into perspective. They are extremely low. If this was a business, it would be a big worry. As an auditor, I used to look at businesses and if they were going concerns. They would not be classed as a going concern if they had such low reserve percentage. So that is fiscally very irresponsible. We need to keep our financial footing strong so that we can achieve our ambitious policies, including tackling climate change. Now, reducing the council tax rise. This presents a substantial risk to the council. It seriously jeopardises the overall financial resilience of the council. Those are quotes from the Section 151 officer. Also, it's not a large increase compared to other councils, as we've said before, and I sincerely believe that most citizens that pay council tax know that it doesn't just cover such things as waste collection, lighting, street cleaning, potholes, etc., but far more importantly, it goes towards social services and education. I'm sure that people would not want to jeopardise these services. For example, people want to see their elderly parents helped to live independently on their own. They want to see their children well educated. In this budget, we are putting in an extra £10 million into social services and over £10 million extra into social services. Our budget focuses on Labour priorities and the priorities that residents want us to focus on. And it's a prudent budget, so I recommend it to the Council.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mackie, please.
Thank you, Chair. Lord Mayor. I would also like to thank Councillor Weaver, the Cabinet and the officers for the work they've done to produce a balanced, sensible yet ambitious budget, giving extra money to recognised areas of demand while still having to make austerity cuts placed on us. The Labour budget gives us a level of security by managing our reserves carefully to enable us to meet the future cuts that the UK government will demand of us, projected as a £4 million budget gap over the next 4 years, and while still providing essential and improving services to our residents. This Labour budget, taking into account £10 million worth of cuts, has still managed to provide extra money, £10.5 million extra for schools, £10 million for social services, the extra £201,000 in the base budget for youth services, the first increase, as we said, for many years. Additional money for estate management, streets cleansing and recycling, and over £3 million extra for waste and recycling this year. I'm really pleased that because of our prudent financial planning, we're able to support some of the Labour priority areas that will make a big difference to my residents in Cathays. An extra £782,000 for roads and pavements, plus £150,000 for lines and signs throughout the city, and blitzes with the deep cleaning blitzes and city centre cleaning. We've also got the extra money for parks and playgrounds and the £500,000 capital programme for playgrounds this year. The budget is supporting our refreshed capital ambition and the corporate plan by putting money where we need it to improve and support our young people's lives and futures, by investing in new services, schools, affordable and social housing, our environment, and dealing with the climate emergency, improving energy efficiency in council homes and schools, and converting 90 of our fleet vehicles to electric over the next 2 years, implementing the transport white paper and increasing recycling rates, along with other initiatives in the One Planet policy strategy due in April. We have to raise council tax to achieve this, and it is still lower than most other councils in Wales. What a fabulous list of things that we're doing. The opposition has given us their alternative budgets, easy to do when not in power. I would love it if we could have even more money to put into youth services, possibly take more out of the contingency fund and reserves, and have next to no raise in council tax. But we have to look at what is appropriate for Cardiff now, and to plan for a stable economy that is sustainable for the challenges we face in the years ahead. Keeping Cardiff, the Cardiff we love. I commend the Labour budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Ladies and gentlemen, Councillor Lee Bridgen.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So today I rise to talk on the budget and congratulate our Labour administration on producing a fair, responsible and sustainable budget. Believe me, as someone who sees on a daily basis the challenges children, young people and their families face, they are far more challenging today than they have ever been, due to the central government's fiscal policy. In England, Wales and Northern Ireland, 35,058 children entered care in the year ending March 2018. In Scotland, it was 4,063, up until July 2018, according to data from the Department of Education. That's one child moved into care every 15 minutes for their own safety. So the pressures on children's services across the UK is immense. I see nothing coming from central government to help with the £3 billion shortfall in funding for children's services. So it's commendable that this administration is at least trying. Yes, there are challenges, which we were all aware of, but they are challenges we will tackle head on. So I welcome the increased budget for our children's services. Councils have spent £1 billion less in real terms on youth services in 2018-19 compared to 2010. Since 2012, over 760 youth centres have closed, with over 14,000 youth worker posts lost. While I welcome the members' ambitious plan to invest £1.5 million into youth services, and clearly understand the frustration of losing so many youth centres in 2015, we must understand the reasoning to this. This was purely down to the level of austerity cuts the council faced, and also a policy change from within Cardiff Youth Service. And as austerity impacted core resources were reduced, but there was a clear change of focus from within, with more emphasis being placed on the reduction of neat young people via the Youth Engagement and Progression Framework. In Cardiff, there was a significant issue with levels of young people leaving Year 11 without a positive destination. This was over 10%. The focus of this has seen a significant reduction, with it currently sitting at 2%. The success has since drawn additional resource to address homelessness and emotional health and well-being, amounting to around 700,000. So like I've said, I welcome your ambition to pump £1.5 million into the service. But I say, with a big but, it's unrealistic and it's not sustainable. And most importantly, it's not what young people want. Young people do not want one-off payments for one-off projects which they lose after a year. Young people want investment in youth services, but they want investment that is realistically and most importantly sustainable. The Labour budget provides this, and I look forward to us investing in further in coming years. The investment you suggest ultimately will set young people up to fail.
Can you start winding up, please, Councillor?
That is why I fully support and commend the Labour budget to Council.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm going to bring an opposition councillor up the list. Are you ready, Councillor Williams? I don't want to spring. Not yet. Councillor Hudson, would you like to speak? It's just a courtesy. Just courtesy, Councillor Bradbury. Just say yourself. Councillor Hudson, please. Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. Every year I express my desire that Cardiff residents' voices will be heard. I'm usually disappointed. But I'm not going to shout. I'm going to talk quietly, and like those who want to put their views over, I feel I can without shouting. Big items that hit households all over the city, like council tax, this year going up to 4.5% increase. However, they are all getting, the return is less value, Citizens are hit from all angles. If I just highlight a couple of things that leapt out at me. Planning, transport and environment sector, the bereavement and registration services, gone up in some cases by over 15%. Can't that be evened out somewhere else? This is hitting a lot of residents, and if I use the vernacular, it's the hatch, match and dispatch sector. The capital ambition is to deliver a new recycling centre in Cardiff North when it is required. This does not encourage legal disposal of waste, but quite the reverse, encourages fly tipping when there is a round trip of sometimes over an hour to each of our 2 remaining tips. I come back to the Labour phrase, when it is required. Well, we required a bus station, but that still hasn't been delivered. Is that required as soon as possible? Then the biggie, capital borrowing. There are exponential big plans for a sports village, a new indoor arena. But you must remember, whatever is borrowed as capital, the interest comes out of the revenue account. But then Labour has always believed in borrowing until there is no money left to pay back and the Treasury is broke. Well-connected communities is to be applauded, but when will we ever get a decent bus station, let alone an interchange at Winegron? I say again, Labour is not listening or helping the people of Cardiff. Do not use the easy way and put the burden on our citizens. They are the ones to which we answer. By the way, the Conservative Monmouthshire Council has traditionally had the lowest funding grant from the Welsh Government, to answer Councillor Patel. I support the Welsh Conservative alternative budget and hope other people will too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a lovely and civil intervention into the debate. It's a pleasure to have you in the chamber, Councillor Hudson. Councillor Lay.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lord Mayor. So, I rise to put my full support behind our Labour budget. Despite still having to find £10 million worth of savings this year, we are still managing to invest in our services due to a fine, balanced budget. Austerity is not over at all, and for the politicians to say it is cruel and heartbreaking to those who are suffering under a Tory government. However, there is a light, and that is this Labour budget, in which we are putting £10 million into our social services, supporting and protecting the most vulnerable within our society. £201,000 in the base budget for youth services. This is huge in areas like mine of Trowbridge St Mellons, where children thrive in the youth clubs which are available to them. The youth club runs out of our fabulous hub, and if you haven't been, I suggest you have a visit. The services there for the community are amazing, and it brings our community together. And that's why I'm proud when I read we are protecting our libraries and creating more community and wellbeing hubs across the city. It is also great to see that we are on track for 1,000 social houses within our city by 2022, with 1,000 more ready to go as well. This is amazing, and I would like to invite you all to my ward to see some of the excellent ones which have gone up in the new development of Silvervale Park. With new houses we have more children within our city, so it is great to see money going into our parks across the city with £500,000 in the capital programme. So with all these new homes going up across the city, we need to improve our infrastructure, and lo and behold there is £78.4 million in this budget for this. Following on from our white paper, this is a massive investment in all modes of transport across the city, investing in reducing the effect of climate change across the city. With our city growing, it is important to make sure we keep our city clean and tidy, and guess what? We have money going into this service as well. Let's together make sure we do everything to improve our recycling figures. Along with Councillor Michael and his team, we as councillors and residents must do our bit. Within this money is funding for the Love Where You Live project, which I am sure you will agree does a fabulous job. It's a really good, balanced budget, one in which we can be proud of, which I certainly am. I ask you all to support.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lay. Councillor Merry, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm proud to rise to support this budget. With its £10.4 million net extra for schools' delegated budgets, an extra £201,000 into the base budget for youth services, the first increase for many years, with another £250,000 from the Financial Resilience Mechanism, Child Friendly Cities funding of £65,000 and a total of £470,000 to fund Cardiff commitments. This is alongside additional funding towards caring for our most vulnerable citizens, including our children who are looked after, with just over £10 million for social services. Councillor Weaver has delivered a budget that gives us ambitious additional spending that reflects our priorities in key areas, but also has an eye on the future. We don't know if this is a temporary fall for public spending or whether it really signals a change in fiscal policy. And I'm not sure that the Prime Minister does either. This budget is no smash and grab on contingencies and reserves or slashing of council tax, careless of what the next year might bring. When the Conservatives talk about morality and the council taxpayers, they are also the people who drive along our streets, who send their children to our schools, who use their services, who have been hit by those cuts over the last few years. They need those services. Instead, we deliver much needed additional funding to our public services in Cardiff. And yes, I am most proud of those which will go to giving our children and young people a best start. In 2008, under the rosy-tinted years of the Plaid Lib Dem coalition, 10% of our young people were not in employment, education or training. Our schools were near the bottom of the class on nearly every major indicator. That was the education system you delivered. Cardiff Commitment has been a fantastic example of partnership working with our businesses, university, the arts, building on our city's assets to deliver opportunities for our young people and giving them that first critical step. Our aim is to become a UNICEF accredited child-friendly city, and that extra funding in the budget will help in that work. And of course, there is the much needed additional money that will be going straight to our schools, just as we have always sought to protect our schools from the worst of the cuts inflicted on us. Finally, that huge increase in funding for youth services that will be transformative. Yes, we hope to do more again in the future, but with a clear plan as to how we deliver the services that are most needed by young people and in a way that is shaped by them. We also deliver the capital for the biggest school building programme in Wales, alongside the money to deliver the green infrastructure the city wants and needs, transforming the city for the future and letting young people themselves be part of shaping that future with child-friendly cities. I commend the budget to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Sandry, please.
Oh, God. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Caught me off guard a little bit there. I want to speak in support of the investment my group have proposed be put into transport and services for young people. We know that the transport environment is going to have to change dramatically over the next few decades if we're to meet targets to reduce carbon emissions. I strongly believe that while we need to learn from the past, we also need to be future thinking. That's why I'm keen to see in this budget money put forward to explore the concept of demand-responsive transport. Demand-responsive transport is able to be flexible in a way that traditional bus services can't be. They can also plug the gap in provision in areas where a timetable frequent service is perhaps not financially sustainable. Rather than put subsidies into running potentially empty buses, doesn't it make more sense economically and environmentally to go when and where the demand is there? Demand-responsive transport takes on board the best of the likes of Uber and Ola, but in a way that makes better use of road space and is more affordable on a per-passenger basis. It works in Liverpool, where Arriva Click run 25 minibuses with 1,000 people downloading the app every week. Users are even abandoning their cars in favour of this service, so why not try it here? I also want to speak in support of scrapping a proposed rise in school transport fees. Some of my residents pay £400 a year per child for school transport. Families, especially those with lower incomes and more than one child, cannot afford this. We have previously attempted to change the rules around free transport, and despite finding the money to do so, we were unsuccessful. At the very least, this council should refuse to raise costs for school transport, even if it won't change its mind on altering the qualifying criteria for free transport. At a time when we're trying to tackle air pollution and the climate crisis, do we really want to do something that could lead to even more cars on the school run? I'll finish by talking about our proposal to invest more money in diversionary activities for young people and their families, to keep young people engaged in productive activities rather than antisocial behaviour. Too many children are falling through the gaps, whether that be because of behavioural problems, family problems, poverty, or problems at school, and it is leading to some young people becoming criminalised at a very young age. These young people are being let down. They're also causing problems for residents, who have to put up with appalling abusive behaviour, which has driven some of them out of their own homes. Despite everything they've been through, these residents still have compassion for these young people. They know that life chances are greatly impacted negatively by being criminalised at such a young age. They want these young people supported by the council, by their families and by the police to stop them from ruining their lives when they've barely begun. I urge you to support our alternative budget.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sandra. Councillor Ellesmore, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I rise to support the budget. I'm proud that as a Labour administration with grand plans and capital ambition to transform and improve our city, our considerable work across social services is beginning to pay off. The first point of contact in hospital supported more than 1,000 people since it began, avoided 514 lost bed days, a saving in excess of £500,000, are truly transformatory independent living services with 97% satisfaction rates, full achievements of the target with no onward referral to adult services in 73% of cases, ensuring people can live independently in their own homes, or changing lives by ensuring that people previously lonely or socially isolated are now better connected to their communities. Our Day Opportunity Service has a success rate of 89%. For children and families, our early help services, together with the Adolescent Resource Centre, now a regional service with Avail, are having positive impacts on the lives of children and families in Cardiff. Importantly, our staff are empowered. In the words of Don Berwick, previous President and Chief Exec of the US Institute for Healthcare Improvement, do what you know to be the right thing. And I'm really pleased to say that they are. I'm grateful to all elected members, particularly Councillor Weaver, the Chair and members of Community and Adult Services Scrutiny Committee, for providing the democratic scrutiny the portfolio deserves. To backbenchers, leader and cabinet colleagues for their essential support of social services. To our staff and the challenges they face on a daily basis, answering the call to be innovative while managing demand and balancing budgets. We've heard a lot about the additional monies that's going into the services that truly matter to individuals, education and social services. We know the challenges for local government, they've been well documented. Rising demand set against a backdrop of increased family poverty really behoves us to work better together, whether in collaboration across cabinet portfolios or across the public sector, working with public services and regional partnership boards. As Councillor Hugh Thomas has said, one team working for Cardiff. Colleagues will always challenge us in terms of savings. I can say, because of the success of our preventative model, we manage demand against a growing population.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'm confident that we will achieve a balanced budget for adult services, and for all the reasons I commend the budget.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Ellesmore. Councillor Cunner, please. Councillor Cunner.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I also rise to support this budget, and when I look at it, I think, yeah, it's responsible, it's prudent, and yeah, it's ambitious, and in many ways it's ingenious, and I'll come back to that in a moment. The word which springs to my mind is it's magic. It's really just an incredible trick that Councillor Weaver is playing here to deliver everything which is in this budget in the face of this context which we've suffered now for 10 years Tory-inspired ideological austerity. And what we've seen, it's not nonsense, it's a political choice.
No.
And what we've seen in this council only, let alone across the rest of the country and our other services, which we all have to rely on, is over £200 million worth of cuts. We're facing 10 million savings this year alone, and we forecast 70 million gap in the next 4 years. And beyond that gap which we're forecasting, there's so much uncertainty from another Tory-inspired ideology, Brexit. We just don't know what's going to happen. So to deliver what's been delivered here is really magic, it would be my word. So thank you, Councillor Weaver, the Cabinet and the senior officers who've managed that. Looking at some of the details and this ambition, this Labour ambition which we've got, I look at my own ward in Canton, the most expensive school built in Wales, being delivered by the Labour Welsh Government, the Labour Council, part of the 21st Century Schools programme in Fitzallen.
Councillor Williams, no.
You look at the facilities which are being proposed in Fitzallen, stitched grass football pitches. These are facilities which millionaire Premier League football players use, which now working class children from every background in Canton, in Riverside, in Grangetown, in Butetown, will be able to use daily. And we look at, as well as the ambition, just the ingenuity, which we've seen year after year, and again in this budget of this Labour Council. Protecting those services which lots of other councils have lost. Our library service. We look in Canton every week, the Hub programme, how we've actually introduced new services into our libraries. You know, every week, myself and the other Canton councils are doing our surgery there. We've got the police are doing surgery, we've got dementia cafes, we've got litter picking running from there, reading groups, Welsh rhyme times, English rhyme times. So much going on in these local hubs, which again we have protected and we are providing the bread and butter stuff which our people benefit from and need in this city. So yeah, thank you once more to Councillor Weaver, to everybody who's worked on this. It's absolutely brilliant in the teeth and in the face of Tory austerity that we have a Labour Council here in Cardiff delivering on priorities which really matter.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Can I please encourage colleagues not to moan or groan or to chew sweets loudly or any other kind of theatrics? It makes it hard to. And you, Councillor Bradbury, I will move you next to Councillor Patel if you keep talking, so where I can keep an eye on you. I will, I promise you. Don't you start, mate. Good man. You deserve the OBE. Right, Councillor Bowen Thompson, please. Bowen Thompson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I stand to support this Labour budget. This budget responds to the needs of our city, and more importantly than that, the needs of the people in our city. Supporting the most vulnerable, investing in our communities and providing financial resilience for the future. Austerity is still with us and impacting greatest upon those who are most vulnerable. We have seen this in the increased demands upon our services. Take social services, for example. This Labour-led council and this Labour budget proactively responds and provides the vital support to increasing numbers of people and families in need. This Labour budget increases our base budget for social services, ensuring for now and into the future that we are properly equipped to safeguard those most vulnerable, and to help with that, importantly including a £333 million investment in social housing. Our schools budget has increased, demonstrating our continual commitment to supporting our young people, increasing their aspirations and helping them to achieve. And I am delighted for our ongoing commitment to the young people in this city is demonstrated by the increasing our investment in youth services, something which we know has been needed. Providing additional youth service provision across the city, increasing our ability to engage with all young people, and importantly, those young people who are most vulnerable and most at risk. Our youth services play a pivotal role in engaging these young people and helping them know that they are an important part of our city. I hear from residents I represent, living in Trowbridge and St Mellons, that this focus on our young people and those who are most vulnerable, it is what they want. Not only does this budget respond to the most pressing issues impacting on citizens across Cardiff, but it is also a secure and prudent budget that looks to the future. It is vital that our delivery for this city is built upon sound financial footings, and this Labour budget does just that, ensuring that Cardiff has the financial resilience to respond to the uncertainties ahead. We know that our levels of reserves are adequate, but they are certainly not flush. We cannot risk our financial resilience by eradicating our general contingency fund. The Conservatives say they want to increase council tax at a lower rate than the Labour proposal, but they also want to remove the general contingency fund. The council tax increase proposed in the Labour budget is lower than that proposed across the majority of councils in Wales. This includes, as we heard earlier, the Conservative-led or Conservative-leading coalitions with independents. Our contingency budget is vital, particularly during these uncertain times. The unknown impact from Brexit, the continuing austerity agenda that the Conservative government is determined to follow. I cannot support any budget amendments at this full council that will expose this council to any risks and expose this council and our wonderful city to increased financial risk. Relying on our reserves as a contingency plan is not prudent financial management. It is only this prudent but ambitious Labour budget that will confidently deliver for the city's capital ambition. I call all members to support this budget.
Thank you, Councillor. I really hate to try to intervene when people are speaking, but can we try and keep to time? We've got a lot of speakers this afternoon. I am. Councillor Michael. No. Councillor Thorne.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise to support the Labour administration budget proposals, and I'm very pleased to say that despite continued financial pressures, we are continuing to invest in our communities, in new council housing, our HUBs programme, neighbourhood regeneration schemes and community safety. The budget proposals include a proposed council tenant rent increase of 2.7%, inflation CPI plus 1%, which would result in an average increase of £2.81 per week. Our rents continue to be very good value for money. The new rents remain well below local housing allowance rates and market rents. They also compare favourably with Joseph Rowntree Foundation living rents. The rent increase will allow us to invest in an exciting range of housing development and improvement works. 11 million will be spent next year on improving council homes, including the commencement of a project to reclad our high-rise blocks. Nearly 3 million will be spent improving our estates. 3 million will be spent adapting our council homes to ensure that older people and those with disabilities can stay independent at home for as long as possible. And as has been said frequently from all of our speakers, 40 million is being spent on building new council homes, 256 million over 5 years, delivering our commitment to build new council homes. As part of our new build programme, we have plans to deliver a new construction skills hub on the former Eastern High School site in Rumney, where we are building 214 new low-carbon homes, and we should start on site this June. The project will be supported by 1.2 million funding over 3 years from the Construction Industry Training Board, providing training for hundreds of young people in the construction trade. We've allocated nearly £500,000 to support the creation of a new estate management service focusing on the traditional council estates that will bring together existing services with additional investment to provide complete estate managed service for an area. As part of our commitment to creating safe and cohesive communities, we will employ a new community safety manager who will support the partnership working within the city and work to address the 4 priorities of the Community Safety Leadership Board. We are also committed to implementing a targeted approach to crime and antisocial behaviour within the Bute Town and Splot wards, identified as priority areas for 2020. Our policy and spending commitments underline the ambition and commitment of this administration to tackling poverty and inequality in Cardiff and making sure Cardiff residents feel safe. I'm pleased to support these budget proposals.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Walker, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Every year we hear the same story about how short of funding the Council is. And every year we witness a failure to meet budgets, miraculously rescued by other departments who clearly had over-budgeted and underspent. If they all spent their budgets as planned, your reserves would soon be depleted and you'd be in serious trouble. How long can that continue? I don't think it can. It's time to clear the air. And it's important for the administration to admit the long-standing and neglected underperforming departments which exist in this council. They rarely get publicised because on the whole they remain hidden unless scrutiny happens to expose them. Children's Services overspends every year by up to £3 million. And finally we are seeing a serious effort to reduce high costs out of county placements. But this is now in 2020. This problem has been going on since I've been a councillor in 1999 and before that. It's starting to happen, but it's yet actually to be achieved. Absence sickness is now growing in number of days taken and in its cost. For 2016-17, when results were better than today's, APSI estimated its cost to the Council to be about 11 million each year. Absence sickness moves towards 12 days at the moment per employee, and nationally, in the UK, the average taken by all industries, including public sector, is 4.4 days, and we're getting up to 12. Fleet management and vehicle servicing, a £9 million budget normally exceeded by about £1 million, like talking in the past. Do we need to be in the vehicle servicing business? This department has never had a value for money assessment made of it. I understand following scrutiny that might now happen. Last year we were told it worked at about 60% of its productivity potential. That's starting to be addressed. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm talking about what's happened in the past and what exists at the moment. And then if you come into the underground car park here, which most of you do, it's full of 40 plus vehicles on most days, isn't it? Standing there, vans, vehicles. What are they doing there? Who's paying for that? And how well managed is our vehicle fleet? Agency staff. 15.5 million was spent on agency in 1920. Much of that to cover absence and sickness levels, which are exceedingly high. But is this money well spent? It's most unlikely. I could go on. These are a few examples. And I've covered about up to £15 million of expenditure in the couple of examples I've quoted. And I haven't even touched on Lambie Way, which is the most serious of the lot. And that deserves another complete debate of at least 3 or 4 hours. So there are examples. If the Council seriously tackled and resolved inefficiency over spending such as these, they might be in the best position not to complain about the budget cuts and Welsh Government austerity. As things stand, you are miles away, are literally miles away from being a well-run, cost-effective and efficient local authority. So when you talk about budgets and you're not even running the present system well, don't even start to discuss that until you've sorted things out. Yeah. And these are the hidden things that you need to start to address and address them now, because we've had this for the last 20 years.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Walker. Councillor Michael.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll try not to shout. I don't want to upset Councillor. This budget will allow the Council to move forward and address the start of the climate change emergency that this Council declared last March. What he said, we declared it. No, all of the Council declared it, not just this side. It will allow us to complete the 9.5 megawatt solar farm on Lambie Way that should be finished over the next few months and produce enough carbon-free electricity to power the equivalent of 2,500 homes. We are waiting for confirmation for the grant for the first phase of district heating network, taking energy from Viridor waste-to-energy plant to heat buildings in the Bay Area. Both of these projects are important milestones if we are to respond to the decarbonisation agenda. In total, 14.6 million of sustainable energy generation. Over the coming months, we will be bringing forward the One Planet Cardiff documents, our response to the climate emergency declaration. This will inform the way that the Council has worked. This will inform the Council of the work that still needs to happen and the amount of work that needs to happen to actually make both the Council and the City carbon neutral, because they're different.
We will work with partners such as the Public Services Board, as we successfully did for the Clean Air Strategy. On Monday, we're going to launch the Pink Sticker campaign to get the members of the public changing the way they recycle. So members have had a pack, and Monday we got a presentation, so I hope to see you all there, 5:30, room 4 upstairs, because better recycling leads to less carbon, and we need to get the contamination driven out. We're working with local governments, with local partnerships, I should say, Welsh Government and RAP on recycling services strategy to deliver 70% recycling target by 24-25 to make Cardiff a world leader in recycling. The realigning of our budget will allow us to provide a better service for our citizens. This budget will allow us to change a part of our RCV fleet. We'll look at every option that is on the market before choosing. This budget will allow us to move forward with a successful Love Where You Live campaign. Volunteers do a fantastic job across the city, as witnessed in the recent work in Bew Park last weekend. And can I put on record my thanks to all those who turned up, and Dave King and the Cardiff Rivers Group, as usual, done a fantastic job. This budget gives us £6.3 million towards flood defences and coastal erosion. Now, I'm sure you've all seen what's happened, and you'll understand that all the flood defences need to be looked at and strengthened as necessary. The management restructure of Lambie Way has given us a chance to look at the way waste, clean streets and recycling performance can change for the better by working with other directorates across the estates of Cardiff. We have led the way with our clean air strategy, clean fuel strategy, change in street lights to LED, and decarbonising of the council. We have trialled green walls, and we'll be looking at the results carefully with a view rolling them out across other areas of the city and other schools. This budget will allow CTS to work with commercial partners, increasing our income. Lord Mayor, this council once again is delivering across portfolios, from sustainable response to climate change, better transport schemes, more investment in youth services, social services, new schools, new housing across the city, giving future generations a better chance to grow in an environmentally friendly, welcoming, prosperous Cardiff. And just for Nigel to finish off, a quote from Spartacus. Whatever happens, it happens, because we choose for it. We decide our fate. And tonight's fate is to support and pass this budget.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Owen Jones, please.
Diolch Argyll Mair. I would like to start by complimenting the other parties for forming alternative budgets. I do know that this requires a lot of work, and it's not something done in every council. The added scrutiny and discussion of ideas is beneficial for everyone, so generally well done with that. Secondly, I would like to congratulate the Tory party on having the confidence to produce straight-faced a budget with only a 1.95% increase in council tax. It's an incredibly hugely and impressive achievement that a group of councillors...
Thank you.
It is incredibly... It is an incredibly hugely impressive achievement that a group of councillors that haven't been in power since I was 1 year old have managed to accomplish something that no council in Wales has been able to do this year. Councillor Robson, I really hope that you have managed to contact all the council leaders across Wales and share your pearls of wisdom, because obviously you guys know something that everybody else does not. But I do not blame the council leaders' mind. I will hear groans from the benches behind me, but sadly austerity is still ongoing. But there is absolutely no certainty from this Westminster government that this is ending any time soon. Just weeks ago we have heard Sajid Javid was asking departments to find 5% savings. Now he's not even the Chancellor, and he's standing up in the Commons saying that the power grab by the Prime Minister went against the national interest. I mean, if Councillor Weaver stood up and said something similar about Councillor Thomas, it would justifiably be a bit of doubt. I mean, I would share your doubt. But when it's the Chancellor of the Exchequer doing this, no worry at all. Can you imagine Councillor Williams' face if Councillor Weaver stood up and said that? I mean, it would be a horrible day for us all. So personally, I think we can forgive local authorities for being a bit sceptical of any promises coming from Westminster at the moment. A rise in council tax is never desirable, but as is evident by the behaviour of pretty much every council across the UK, to maintain our vital services, it is a must. In terms of the Lib Dems, first of all, we consulted on a 4.5% rise. So I'm sorry, Councillor Berman, I'm less impressed with your Mystic Meg ability. And what the Lib Dems say about council tax, I am really sorry about this. I don't want to be stereotypical, but you do really like to flip-flop as a party. You as a party acknowledge the hardship of austerity has caused. You claim to understand the pressure it has had on services. You know that services are closing across the country and that life expectancy has gone down since 2010. You also clearly don't agree with Councillor Jenkins about a Brexit boom is on its way. But when we use one of the few powers we have to safeguard the future and protect our citizen service, you accuse us of being the ones of playing politics and being cynical. I'm sorry, that's just not on. And I realise I'm coming up. Everybody has said everything good about this budget, so I'll carry on with that, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mike Jones-Pritchard, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And knowing what happened at the end of the film, Councillor Michael is welcome to be Spartacus. I think there's a couple of comments. Nobody on the opposition benches has criticised the education budget, has criticised what's happening with housing, has criticised what's happening with dealing with inequality. That's still in the budgets. Nobody's questioning it. It's good policies you're putting into those monies. I do have to disagree with the Chair of Planning there, though. If this is stripped to nothing, this is an impressive comment made about the most expensive school in Wales being built in a stripped to nothing budget. And even the budget document itself says that since 2008, the settlement has gone up every year. So, let's stop playing with words in here in that one. But almost a year ago, as Councillor Michael says, this council declared a climate emergency. And 3 months ago, I said that we had 11 years to carbon zero and that the clock was ticking. The clock has ticked over 8 million times since then. And there are 3 main concerns that came up in the document you hear, in the budget, and the survey that you put in there to the public. The 3 highest level points were the transport system, affordable housing, and climate change. And I'm pleased to see the housing programme, but on the other 2 points, I just don't see the sort of expenditure or commitments that are needed, or the planning for it, in the coming years. Although I recognise that the millions in connection with the grant received in the clean air commitments are within the budget. The white paper did come later in the year on transport, but you were writing it, so you did have advance notice of what was coming in it. And I accept that the discussion in December that we need to quickly move to zero carbon came rather late in the year for the financial planning process, but there's been plenty of time to consider the commitment to action following the declaration of the climate emergency last March. And had I heard Councillor Michael's comments prior to writing this, I might have made a couple of changes to what I'm saying. But there is, apart from what Councillor Michael said, precious little to show for it in this year's budget and in the projected figures for forthcoming. The declaration of the fact that we made a climate declaration emergency is stated a number of times, and the words following it are LED lighting, low energy housing, electric vehicles and their charging points. Well, LED lighting has been around for quite a few years. It's a programme that's been in place. It's not something that's suddenly come up for that one. It's admirable, it's coming, it's better lighting, and the control is great. And the savings that are down for the electricity saving by the dimming and the controlling, admirable, and it's reducing carbon as well. In terms of low energy housing, again, it's where we've got to go, and the changes that Councillor Thorne has put in with the passive house schemes and whatnot is excellent. But in terms of the amount of housing we need and the impact on the existing housing stock in Cardiff, it's a drop in the ocean, and an ocean that beyond the barrage is rising. As for electric vehicles and charging, great, but that's in the budget. It's a sentence about changing our fleet over the next few years.
Can you start winding up, please, Councillor?
Already? I can't believe that. Anyway, I shouldn't have had the jokes with you, Councillor Michael, should I? In the other terms, very disappointed about the commitment on changing the green environment in Cardiff. But thank you very much for the 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Stubbs.
I'd like to start by thanking Councillor Thomas. They say every day is a school day, and today you have taught me that the Labour Party turns 120. This is an occasion to celebrate. The party that brought us the National Health Service marks its 120th birthday. The National Health Service has achieved ever increasing life expectancy, well until the Tories were elected this time. It is shocking, Joel. It is absolutely shocking. I was going to spend some time now talking about other Tory councils delivering council tax increases. Where they're empowered, they deliver it. Where they're not empowered, they talk about cuts. But what I wanted to do instead was answer the point that was made a few times in the chamber, that the reason that councils like Monmouthshire have had to raise council tax is because they received a worse settlement. This isn't the case. The settlement is based on needs and pressures. If you are suggesting that we should base the funding formula on something else, and therefore Monmouthshire at Cardiff's expense should get more money, you should say so. Perhaps Councillor Williams could include it on his leaflets next year. And the reason that Tory councils do this is because it's far harder to set a budget in these times of pressure than it is to make admittedly eloquent speeches about lower council tax rates. You haven't spoken yet, John. I welcome the work Councillor Weaver has done on this budget and freely acknowledge it can't have been easy. I particularly welcome the increase in funding for social services. This department, more than any other, has to face the grim realities of 10 years of policies deliberately targeted to make the lives of the vulnerable more difficult. As someone who represents quite a large council estate, I welcome the additional money for cleaning services on that estate and think it will make a real difference. And I also welcome the additional money for play parks. If we are going to be a child-friendly city, it's really important that we take play really seriously. But it's also really important that parks are safe for people to play on. So with that in mind, Tremorfa Park needs more investment to keep that park secure from bikes and horses. Austerity was not the only pressure, however, on Councillor Weaver when he came to set this budget. The other pressure was the ambition of Councillor Hugh Thomas, or Cardiff Council's Clem Attlee, as I'm going to call him. He puts additional pressure on Councillor Weaver with his ambition to build 1,000 more council houses.
Can you wind up, please, Councillor?
To renew the school's estate and
settle down.
For a better environment. So I call on you, if you share Councillor Thomas's ambition, support this budget.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parkhill, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I'm delighted to rise, largely because my legs are absolutely killing me. This is a hell of a lot. I want to, first of all, say to councillors across the board, really, you've all mentioned, or most of you have mentioned, austerity. I was counting for a while. I got to 26 references, but actually I got a bit bored of it. I totally disagree with you. Quite frankly, this is a 4.1% increase in the Welsh Government grant fund that we're getting, which is double the rate of inflation. If a double the rate of inflation is now suddenly austere, then increasing the grant, then I am astonished, quite frankly. Some of you also referenced Danny Dorling's completely inaccurate report with regards to the life expectancy. So let me actually quote you what the ONS said in its most recent report, which Danny Dorling supposedly quoted. UK life expectancy has not been declining in 2016 to 2018. Life expectancy at birth was the highest observed for both males and females. So it's totally wrong. This is a left-wing academic who is completely falsely producing a report. And quite frankly, the fact that you're referencing something is completely wrong. I want to come back to some of the points that Gavin Hill-John made, particularly over St David's Hall. That is a really subsidised, a hugely subsidised venue, as Councillor Bradbury admitted during scrutiny the other week. And quite frankly, we shouldn't be subsidising it quite as much as it is at the moment. We need to be getting that to be completely self-funding. The fact that it's over £1 million that we're putting in every single year is quite frankly too much, and it could go well towards other services, potentially things like funding community groups, for funding art and culture within our city, instead of absolutely... no, it should be self-funding. You should listen, Councillor Jones.
Councillor Jones,
with regards to Councillor Cunner's thing about Brexit, I find it quite amusing that you're saying that after like an absolute drubbing in the general elections. I'm sure the people of North Wales and potentially even the people of Neath Port Talbot, who were only 5,000 votes off turning Tory at the last election, will be delighted by your statement. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Parkhill. Thank you very much. Councillor Lister, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Bradbury, no.
I rise predominantly to thank officers and the Cabinet for coming up with this budget. And I want to begin really by talking about comments made during the previous debate. The Lib Dems to my left mentioned some of our ambitions as being, and our corporate plan as being a bit of a dream. Well, I'm pretty sure people were in a bit of a dream when they voted for you in 2010, and what they actually got was bedroom taxes, student fee increases, and on a local level they had £10 million given to private companies, failing education. So I'm not going to take any lessons on ambitions and actually delivering from yourselves. And at the back of the room, we had comments about this council not being able, this administration, not being able to run a raffle. Cardiff Council has existed as it is since 1995, and in that time, there have only been 5 leaders of this this council. 4 of those have been Labour leaders. One of them, a colleague over there, was a Liberal Democrat. There has not once been a Tory sat on those benches leading this administration, and that's because the people of Cardiff actually trust us to deliver on this. So going back to delivering for this city, the budget that is being laid today by this administration is an extra £10.4 million going directly to schools, directly in their delegated budgets, so that our governing bodies, our head teachers, our school staff can actually deliver first-class education in 21st century schools through a £284 million investment across schools across Cardiff. That is all being funded by Cardiff Labour and Welsh Labour. There's £10 million in this budget going directly to social services to protect and support our most vulnerable, whether they are children or whether they are adults, supporting those with disability, supporting those families that are at the verge of breaking down, to make sure that we can offer as much support as possible. Talking about future generations, £200,000 into the base budget of the youth service, nearly £500,000 to the Cardiff commitment to support those future generations. In terms of energy efficiency, utilising the Welsh Government RBED scheme to improve energy efficiency, Lambie Way, district heating, £3 million going into recycling and cleansing across the city. And then I just really do want to get this point in before my time does run out, on housing. I am extremely proud of this council, this administration's record on housing. In 2017, we set ourselves an ambitious target of 1,000 properties by 2022. We are on track to deliver that and have 1,000 more plots identified by then. My cabinet colleague, my ward colleague, in the cabinet is redeveloping sites across the city, including in our own ward, Channel View, and looking for others so that we can provide that good quality, above the Welsh Housing Quality Standard, housing for those most in need of it. And we take a great pride in that good quality housing, and I am disgusted at people on the benches behind me who have described our spending on housing as extravagant and building slums of the future. I'm proud of this administration for delivering for those people. Other councillors may have turned around and said about us hitting people in the pockets. Well, that's what the Tories have done since 2010, hitting those on benefits. Thank you very much. I commend this budget.
Settle down. Let's all try and keep calm. Settle down. Councillor Calloway, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The budget proposed by the administration once again heaves council tax beyond inflation, once again thrusts the burden straight to the doorsteps of residents, once again raids the household budgets of Cardiffians first. Absolutely. It is always the case, predictable as the setting of the sun, that come budget time, the administration's prime instinct is to balance the books on the backs of Cardiff residents. The alternative budget, proposed by Councillor Robson, shows that there is another way. If this council is prepared to do the hard work of eliminating mismanagement waste, demonstrated by the eye-watering sick pay and agency bill, if it is prepared to look again at the structure of the reserves, remembering whose money this is, if it is bold enough to remember that though officials may provide advice, our instructions come from the public, then another way is possible. Councillor Robson's budget would not only more than halve the proposed council tax increase, it would allow funds to plant more trees in our city while restoring bus routes in areas such as Kincoid. Kincoid pays some of the highest council tax in Cardiff and receives some of the lowest funding, and it is only fair that my residents are able to catch a bus. Councillors, it's time to step up. It's time to remember who sent us here. It's time to crush the waste bill. It's time to end the tax hikes. It's time to be bold. It's time to back the alternative budget, Councillor Robson's budget and the people's budget.
Councillor Jones! Oh, no, thank you. No, thank you. Councillor Wood, please. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So, too often listening to Labour, you believe that the allocation of money to problems is the end of the matter. But the management of how that money is spent is just as, if not more important. The area covered by Clean Streets Waste and Recycling portfolio over recent years has seen a record of poor management and poor outcomes for this city and our residents. In this budget, there is a 2.9 million realignment within recycling and neighbourhood services. In part, this is covering up a failure to deliver budget savings from previous years. Money lost that could have been used to improve our waste services and reduce the council tax burden on our residents. It is either mismanagement by failing to deliver savings or mismanagement by proposing unachievable savings, but mismanagement nonetheless. Along this theme, we have seen a number of serious investigations in recent years, with potential liability still hanging over our balance sheets. And the worker sickness rates remain persistently high, adding to costs. The recycling rates, whilst they may be some of the best now, don't appear to be improving enough to meet our targets, with likely financial penalties in the future. At best, a worrying picture, but doesn't provide much reassurance money is being used well. There is a one-off FRM investment in cities for street cleaning and deep cleaning teams, which is welcome and clearly needed. This is necessary because this council has failed to keep our streets, parks and communities clean. Residents and visitors know Cardiff streets are dirtier than ever, waste and litter are ever present. The long-term damage and permanent contamination of the environment by not dealing with this is unacceptable. The Labour administration can try and blame individuals for causing the waste, but they are ultimately responsible for keeping our streets clean, and this is not happening. The money needs to be used effectively and results delivered, but we shall see. And my final point is the household waste recycling centre for the north of Cardiff. I am pleased that there is capital allocated in the budget for this purpose. However, the shock revelation is proving difficult to find a site suitable isn't a surprise to anyone except perhaps this inept administration. Labour's short-sighted approach of closing the existing site of Weather Road before opening replacement, which I believe was against their pre-election promises, has got us here, leaving the city poorly served. I'll end with a prediction. Labour will not find a site, but continue to claim they are looking for one until the next election, and then abandon the plan the day after. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Settle down, please, friends. Councillor McCurley, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. One of the more engaging features of this year's budget and corporate plan has been the various letters which have been submitted by the chairs of scrutiny. The chairs of scrutiny have submitted a number of very incisive letters, clearly helped by having competent and engaged members of the scrutiny panel. I think it does them great credit. Now, traditionally, and in past years, the battlefields selected by these scrutiny panels have tended to be attempts to reinstate expenditure which has been cut on a popular project. Sometimes it has been to interpose new expenditure for a favoured scheme. But there was one theme which stood out from all the scrutiny letters this time. It was all of them were alarmed by the huge increase in corporate debt, and all of them were very worried about how they were going to service that debt. Now, Councillor McGarry gave some good advice when talking about the level of reserves which were appropriate, and indeed she is quite correct. The level of reserves are not excessive for a turnover of £1 billion. On the other hand, what she did not point out was that if debt increases massively, so should reserves. If debt increases rapidly, you have to look and analyse what is the nature of that debt. Now, some of the debt is being financed by other people. Some of it is being used to create housing, which clearly will produce a revenue, but lots of it will not produce any revenue. It is right to catch up on the backlog of repairs on corporate buildings, operational and non-operational, but you don't get any income by so doing. It is right to invest in Band B schools, but it does not in itself increase the income of the council. Now, Cardiff Council has got an obligation. It is going to continue to service these debts without having to bite into non-statutory services to increase its income. And while the Cabinet were quite bold in taking the obvious target in putting up council tax, and the less obvious targets of increasing the cost of death and the cost of a school lunch, what they have not done is sit down to have meaningful discussions with the principal paymaster, which is the Welsh Assembly. Now, I had the pleasure of hearing the First Minister speak last week, and it was entirely clear that he wanted Cardiff to continue to grow and thrive and attract new jobs. It was also clear that he was very happy that Cardiff should be the economic engine driving growth in the southeast of Wales. But a clear example where Cardiff was led astray by the Welsh Government was over the LDP, under which my part of Cardiff is currently suffering. It was made very clear they wanted the houses to be built. It was made very clear that they were not going to find any money to bring the Section 106 forward in advance to improve infrastructure. We have got to have a long-term, sensible relationship with the Welsh Government, and that includes, and I make no apology for saying it, an attempt to get a fairer share of NNDR. If we're investing money in things like conference centres and hotels, which were once upon a time struggling to finance themselves, if we're going to invest in all of these things, we must find a way of getting a payback. And the only possible payback is getting an equitable share of the extra business rates which are generated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wild, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The opportunity to rise in support of this budget and talk a little bit about the money we spend across this city and that we spend it, how responsibly we spend it. It was really interesting, heartwarming in some ways to see the response to the floods last week. Real decimation across some areas. You look at Cardiff and the response we had, and obviously we see our public services when we really need them, don't we, when they're out there working on our behalf, working hard. But actually that's 364 other days of the year when they're putting in place that maintenance, that support, making sure our infrastructure is kept up to speed is when our spending and our prudence really shows its purpose. But we also spend money on officers, some of the best people in the business working on our behalf. But obviously we're also spending a lot in my area, certainly transport and planning, in terms of capital, and that's where you can really see how the city is changing. Spending around £30 million a year of capital spend, things like road resurfacing, the structures we spoke about, LED lighting, pavements, active travel and all the road safety improvements that I know so many of you are keen to see in your areas. And when you spoke about, I think Steve called it a bit of magic, but where a lot of that magic comes in, because it is tough times for this, and how do we get to spend 30 million, upwards of £30 million? It's because we use that trick where we also get other people to spend it, and they come with us to make sure we can build things for the city. The Welsh Government buying into what we're doing, funding active travel, funding different elements we're trying to do around our transport. Just this morning I was at the City Deal Regional Transport Authority, and they're confirming investment into the city centre in terms of a lot of the transport interventions we're looking to make. But obviously all this spend has to be on a purpose, and I'm glad, I hope I'll satisfy Councillor Howells, Councillor Jones-Pritchard somewhat to assure you that the money, every pound we're looking to spend is looking to go on future generations, on climate change, on air pollution. The White Paper 10 years, for me now a 9-year plan, because we're already spending against a lot of things. Let's just quickly touch on the things we're doing here, the metro and the bus stations, and actually that's to do with prudent management, because actually getting a good deal together means you get £15 million of Welsh Government money to help us fund the bus station, rather than Cardiff taxpayers having to fund it all. And I hope, you guys, you sound pretty bitter about the bus. I hope you still enjoy it. I don't know if you guys use the bus much, but I hope you guys enjoy it when it is there. Councillor Boyle, I hope you're not too bitter about that wonderful BBC building, having an argument with yourself about whether a Foster's Architects building for the BBC outside our central square is not a great entrance to our city. you look at different elements of this plan, bus growth, how we're talking investing in bus priority lanes, electric buses, the routes you've all spoke about, and of course active travel, £10 million going into helping people get around sustainably and healthy. And all this, of course, because we've got prudent financial management, that we get money in from the private sector, Welsh Government backing us all the way, but most importantly, outstanding financial management from the officers of this Council and from our colleague Councillor Weaver. I commend this budget to you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Keith Parry, please.
I rise, perhaps belatedly, to second the Welsh National Party amendment. Squirrels hide their nuts away when it's raining for rainy days. Well, it's raining outside, and don't put your nuts in the contingency funds or reserves. Spend them now. Rebuild and reintroduce the youth centres that were there 10 years ago. My colleague said there were 20-odd youth centres, council youth centres closed in recent years. There were 22 when we ran the council with the Liberal Democrats, and we wish to see them open. Well, we're in another form. So, invest in the youth, the sovereign youth, the future of the country. Again, I see in the budget this year, as I mention every year, a lack of investment in the St David's Day Fund, which is a great pity because almost every other local authority invests in the St David's Day Fund. However, it starts from the City Hall on Sunday at 12:30, and you are all most welcome to come along with us.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Settle, please, friends. Settle, and Councillor Carter, please. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Settle down.
Oh, thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you. Please settle down. I'm rise to support the Liberal Democrat amendment today, and to follow in the footsteps of my good colleagues. One of the joys of living it late to press your finger on a day like this is you get to hear so many wonderful speeches beforehand, and I think actually, councillors, we have excelled ourselves tonight in some of our more random speeches. I've never heard so many people quoted eloquently in this chamber, particularly going from the highbrow to lowbrow as it goes down. But I think actually my good friend Councillor Keith Parry has to take the award to the most random speeches of the evening. Anyway, and that was an absolute pleasure to follow you, Councillor Parry. But ultimately, this is a very serious issue we're discussing today. It doesn't feel like it, but it really is. And I think, and the purpose of our amendment really is because we believe there are opportunities to release money tied up in the contingency funds and to reduce the burden, the council tax burden on our residents, and also invest in other positive projects. We're not seeking to do this for the sake of slash and burn policies or to kind of reduce or just to try and go for the close to zero as possible. We have been prudent as best we can. And I have to say, I feel slightly uncomfortable. I mean, the debate has got better. So, when I was originally looking at my speech, I did feel uncomfortable about the amount of councillors in this chamber who would talk about council tax as a moral decision. I mean, a good few speeches in the first few minutes featured this, and talking about council tax as a moral, if not an amoral thing. And I do worry, Lord Mayor, about the slippery slope that leads us into. If we start going into sort of Trumpian politics and bringing morality into tax and spend, it's a very low thing. And I've heard I've heard it from both sides. Socialism kind of dressed up as a moral thing, as a moral virtue as well. Politics and morality, well, you might say that, Councillor. Politics and morality are both very different things. I think we have to be very careful. I also want to pick up at I also worry, councillors, that we ban the term austerity around far too easily in this council chamber. Whenever anything is bad from UK government, it's seen as austerity. Whenever anything is good from Welsh government, it's seen as a socialist paradise. And I think we have a tendency of kind of over-egging the terms in both directions, just to suit the political interest of whoever's speaking. I can be guilty of that myself, councillors, but we have done it a lot in this chamber today. But the reality, when it comes to this budget, is it's not about about. It is about us as councillors taking difficult decisions and creating a balance between tax and spend, council tax and charges. Not necessarily the most exciting decisions, but important ones to do. And the reality is that the settlement from Welsh Government is better than planned, and therefore the cuts demanded by departments is far less. Councillor Weaver's axe has been far lighter than expected. I have the pleasure, councillors, of shadowing Councillor Thorne and Councillor Asmore as part of my portfolio. And actually, when we scrutinised their proposals under Councillor Jenkins' wonderful chairmanship, they weren't that bad, and the savings were not that severe in comparison with previous years.
Could you wind up, please, Councillor?
Showed that. So this is not about austerity. It's not about a socialist money tree. It's about us taking difficult decisions, and it's in that context that we put forward some realistic changes to this budget. We've tried to reduce council tax a bit. We tried to invest a few more extra £1,000 here and there into key projects we think should be invested in. We're trying to do the best thing by our taxpayers, and I like to think that the administration might take on board some of our proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jake. Councillor Derbyshire, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to start by congratulating the opposition. For the first time since I've been a councillor, all three of you have agreed with all of our spending proposals, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So I congratulate you all for realising what a good job we're doing. There are just one or two issues where obviously you've come up with something slightly different, and it's not that surprising. In terms of the reserves, as always, certain parties have decided that they want to dig into those, even though we all know that they are one-off amounts of money that can't be replaced, and as Councillor McGarry pointed out, a very small proportion of our annual budget, and if we were to dig into it any more, we could be in serious difficulties going forward. Another is the contingency fund, which I was a bit disappointed in Councillor Robson describing as a slush fund. This is not a slush fund. This is not money that's going to somebody or it lining people's pockets. This is money that's put aside in case of necessity. In case of necessity. In case of some of the things that could come up through issues around climate change, problems with social services, which is an increasing problem for us year on year, the unknown Brexit, or the unknown things. I mean, this year we've got problems with things like the coronavirus dieback. We don't know what impact these are going to have on the council. We have to have money put aside to cope with those. And finally, the council tax issue. I could misquote Councillor Callaway by saying about the rising of the sun is as inevitable as the Tories talking about nil budgets or very small council tax rises, but I won't. But what I will say is that they've been doing it ever since I've been a councillor. When I first came on in 1999, some of my Conservative colleagues were there then and are there now. They were saying the same thing then that they're saying now. If we'd have gone along with their budget proposals over the last 20 years, this council would have either been bankrupt or we would have sold off most of our assets because we couldn't have afforded to continue without them. What you have to bear in mind is with council tax, you've got three alternatives to council tax. You can either increase charges for facilities, get rid of facilities altogether, or bring in income charges for things that we don't charge for now. Those are the three alternatives you have to council tax. So what we have to maintain is this is a very ambitious council. It's a Labour council. It's the 8th consecutive budget of a Labour council under austerity for every single year of those. And I'd like to quote Wonder Woman. I remember very well her prophecy words, Cardiff is a great council. Cardiff under a Labour administration is a fantastic council. Carry on the good work.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Boyle, please. Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, I made a bit of a tactical mistake earlier on. Having, through your good offices, asked members of the council to sponsor me in my London Marathon bid, I then proceeded to slag a lot of people off in what might go down as the worst 3 minutes or poorly judged 3-minute speech. Lord Mayor, for this speech I've got 4 minutes. I am no fan of, as I've said before, this process, and it did seem a bit rich of Councillor Bradbury to say that no serious work had been done by the opposition groups. We got the data about 48 hours ago, roughly. 10 Lib Dems here, a 660 million budget, an officer for a couple of days a week, and the expectation that somehow we can come up with a fully fledged alternative budget, as one or two have suggested, is ludicrous and exposes the ludicrous nature at some level of this process and the debate around it. We have heard constantly the word prudence. I don't know, I'm expecting Gordon Brown to walk through those doors in a minute. And the accusation thrown at us that we are somehow being unprudent, or imprudent, I should say. I'm sorry, we cannot accept those accusations, especially when we hear about the vast realignment sums. I sat in Cabinet last week and we heard that between month 6 and month 9, 3 months, the overspend in social services, despite all the assurances about the financial checks that were being placed from the Cabinet, in 3 months the overspend had worsened by another £1 million in 3 months. So to be accused of sort of being unwise in our proposals simply ignores the fact that actually the level of control exerted by the administration, who is telling us the right way of running the budget. I mean, Councillor Derbyshire is telling us that there are, the financially prudent way of running it. The fact is we look at an administration that, in our view, is not running it prudently, where the money is not being controlled appropriately. And Councillor Wood, in his speech, picked up on that realignment issue and illustrated the point perfectly about how the lack of control means we cannot accept the rather tired way, this sort of default fallback onto a 4.5%, which I knew that when Councillor Weaver, I appreciate his time he gave to us earlier in the autumn. I knew that figure was coming back then, long before the settlement was agreed. We knew the contingency figure was in there. And it strikes me that there's a sort of an unimaginative reversion to the mean on this, rather than an exploration really about whether those figures are necessary. Lord Mayor, we've heard a lot of history today. Lord Bute, Clem Attlee, Nick Clegg. We even had a love letter to socialism, as if Jeremy Corbyn was just emerging over the horizon rather than vanishing into the dustbin. What we know is that socialism puts the system first and the individual last. And which came out of a Beveridge Liberal, if you don't mind. Now, anyway,
settle down,
Lord Mayor, we reject that. That's a political, philosophical position. We don't put the system first and the individual last. We do it the other way round. And that's why, Councillor Jones, instead of banging on about socialism, I think you need to listen to the speeches of Councillor Howes and Councillor Sandry, for example, whose speeches put people and their lived experiences first. That's why we can't accept your default council tax increases, your default contingency funds. That's why we want to talk about those things that affect individuals. And I think things like the demand-responsive transport is a perfect example of that. Councillor Bradbury, I come back to you in your bizarre soliloquy about Lord Bute. I'm not sure anybody understood. You dismissed some of the ideas we'd brought forward around the urban, the green fund that we put. Well, last year, the administration dismissed our proposals to use the homelessness reserve. They said, in one of the bizarrest contributions I've ever heard, Councillor Thorne said, money doesn't really matter when it comes to dealing with homelessness. This year, they've done precisely what we suggested 12 months ago and used the homelessness reserve. So I fully expect that in 12 months' time, you will not be able to read this budget for stumbling across foliage. Because the plans that we have put forward now, perhaps around demand transport, perhaps around green walls and urban foliage, will now be adopted by you because you recognise the sense of what we are saying.
Could you start winding up, please, Councillor?
Lord Mayor, I'll wind up.
No, you cannot. No, you cannot. Absolutely not. Not on my watch, Pilgrim. No way. No way. No way. No way, friends. Roll it back in. Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams.
Well, thank you, Lord Mayor. Now, to start with a quote by Iron Man. Heroes are made by the path they choose, not the powers they are given. And it is a great shame that there are no heroes on Cardiff Labour benches this evening. Now, the leader of the council wants, I'm sure, a champagne calibre cabinet. Am I right, leader? A champagne calibre-esque cabinet. A 10 out of 10 cabinet. Am I right? Absolutely. So that means, it can only mean one thing, that Councillor Bradbury, bless his socks, is out at the reshuffle in May. And I've heard rumours that Councillor Bradbury
Councillor Williams,
is on his way
Councillor
out.
Williams, I'm sorry to... Councillor Williams, Councillor Williams, that was a bit below the belt. We can't have that kind of...
Well, that's what I've been told. If the leader would
But
like
no.
Who else?
Councillor Williams. Councillor... Thank you. Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams, if you carry on in this vein, we'll have to stop you. So try and show your colleagues some respect, please. Have a go. Come on.
Could I have someone's speech, please? I need a speech. Right. Well, I'm very disappointed that Cardiff Labour colleagues actually didn't talk about Cardiff that much in their contributions this evening. They spoke an awful lot about other local authorities in Wales. Well, I want to talk about Cardiff because our budget is bold. It is wrong to ask people in Cardiff to pay more for less. And in our alternative budget, we reflect on that. Yes, we support the significant improvements to flood defences, to our schools, to housing, to communities. But you know what? We still believe that we can achieve all of that with a council tax rate that is half of what is being proposed. Now, we've heard Labour councillors talk all a lot about austerity. Welsh Government is responsible for education, for health, for economic development. They now have control over income tax, business rates, planning, the environment and local government. So are you blaming Welsh Government for the austerity? No. You're not. Okay. You're blaming yourselves. No. And I think it's very important that Cardiff Labour take responsibility for their actions. And Keith, thank you so much. You are fantastic for taking ownership of Cardiff Labour's problems. You should be in the cabinet, sir. You should be in the cabinet.
It's not interactive.
I believe, Lord Mayor.
Settle down. Let him speak.
I believe, Lord Mayor, that the bigger the state, the smaller the citizen. And I believe that we should be empowering citizens and communities in this great city. We have a fantastic team of council officers who are being let down by political leadership. In Cardiff North, from Pontprenine Old St Mellons to Llandaff North, the residents are being let down. Where is the household waste recycling centre? Where is our bus station? What about the fly tipping CCTV
can you start winding up, please,
that we've
Councillor
been
Williams?
asking for a long time? What about the pothole fund and the public transport improvements? This budget is lousy, Lord Mayor. We should be doing a lot more. Support the Conservative alternative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mollick, please. Councillor Mollick.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wasn't intending to speak, but having heard so many speeches today, I thought, well, I should contribute in response to some elements of it. Our Labour-run council and colleagues in the Labour ranks quite often point out to the Lib Dems or to the Tories regarding the coalition years and what happened during the coalition years. What they forget is what happened prior to 2010 that led to the coalition formation, the mess that Labour left the country in, that led to the coalition.
Listen to what you're saying. Settle down.
By the coalition, within the coalition years. That's the national politics, and for me, I don't like bringing national politics into our local council chambers. But talking more locally then, of course education is a big remit of the budget at the moment, and what we mustn't forget is the closure of Hawardian High School. Those that remember that school has led to crisis now in capacity around that part of the city in terms of school capacity. Of course, we welcome the Lib Dem Assembly Education Minister in the Welsh Assembly that is supporting the building of new schools in Cardiff. It gives me great pride, actually, that we have an Assembly member, the Lib Dem Assembly member, who's leading the education in Wales, who has come up with constructive policies that are talked about not only in Wales, but across nationally and internationally, in the sense that how we should be funding students through the maintenance grant rather than what Labour were doing in trying to support the fees structure that was put in place, which didn't really have the impact that the maintenance grant is having. So it's a great pride that we have, that we do have a Lib Dem member within Labour ranks in the Assembly that is seeing some sense in the policies they deliver within the Assembly. So whilst they don't want to take lessons from the Lib Dems,
Calm down.
they have much to be proud of that Lib Dems have delivered for them in the Assembly and here locally by supporting the local school structure and the plannings going ahead. So, we get told repeatedly that they're not going to take lessons from us. So whatever constructive plannings that we bring to the Cabinet within the chambers, they often disregard on those due to that. But what we're proposing today is an investment on public transport, is an investment on youth services, is an investment to protect and expand our green infrastructure in Cardiff. Now, are you telling me those are elements that you are not willing to engage with us on delivering for Cardiff people? But because this is your commitment and our commitment to the city and the people of Cardiff that we improve this element.
Can you stop winding up, please, Councillor?
So by denying the Lib Dem budget today, you are going against your own pledges for the city and the people of Cardiff.
Keep calm. Thank you very much, Councillor Mike. Councillor Mia Rees, please. Mia Rees.
I would just like to take a moment to address the repeated mentions of council tax rises at other local authorities. The fact is that these are because of the party political local government settlements coming from the Welsh Labour government.
No heckling, please. Show some respect. We're almost finished. Try and keep calm. Try and control yourselves. I'm terribly sorry, Councillor Rees. Do go on.
Thank you. I struggle to buy Councillor Stubbs' argument when Wrexham Council has 3 of the 4 wards with the highest poverty rates in Wales. Some other facts that people might be interested to know. Of the 5 authorities to see the largest increase, 4 are Labour run, with reserves totalling over £300 million. The majority of North Wales councils have seen smaller increases than elsewhere. 4 of the lowest funded 5 councils are from North Wales. I wonder why. Labour members have referred to council tax increases in Conway, Wrexham and Monmouthshire. This is because they have all had the worst funding settlements from the Welsh Labour government. Conway 3.4%, Wrexham 3.5% and Monmouthshire 3%, the lowest. This is not because of need, clearly, but because of party. To quote Wonder Woman, what one does with the truth is more difficult than you think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Cowan, please. Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is the 22nd council budget I've contributed to, I understand. So, on 20... You go far. So on 22 occasions I have consistently argued that through the efficient and effective stewardship of the council's finances, it is possible to deliver better services at lower costs. Now, I'd written something in advance, but I have heard some of the Labour speakers, so during the debate I did have a look into an issue. So, Councillor Thorne, a few other members have talked about council housing and how amazing we're doing, and we're going to have 1,000 by 2022. But I have to say, colleagues, there's an article in the press on the 30th of May 2019, council houses built in Wales for the first time in decades. So we are light years behind where we should be. The council have said that they want to increase the rent to our tenants, and the Assembly is saying no, we need to keep it low. So, there needs to be a bit of consistency on this important issue. I really do feel that. I have consistently argued that there is an alternative to the lazy approach of the Cardiff Labour Group, that year on year it simply maximises council tax increases to mask the fact that they are incapable of finding creative solutions to the challenges that we face. Why not use any increase in council tax as a matter of the last resort, as opposed to first resort, as has been in the case many, many times over the years? We see proposed budget increases months and months before any settlements, and this is totally unacceptable. They claim, colleagues, to be the party of the many, not the few. The fact is, they are the party of paying more for delivering less. And regrettably, today's budget proposals are simply another dose of the same. Lord Mayor, I'd like to focus briefly on my group's proposed amendment, which seeks to help the Labour group to keep council tax increases to a minimum without affecting services. The taxpayers of Cardiff are relied on to boost the council coffers, but many see so little in return for their hard-earned money. Instead of wanting to help the few, why not change tack and help the many? The many residents across Cardiff who are working hard to provide for their families. The many residents who live within their means, save and ensure they pay their taxes. The many residents who contribute and often see the council spending money which has little or no benefit to them directly. Residents in my ward ask me if the council tax raise in a particular ward could be retained in that ward and used there, as many residents can't see how their money is spent. I really do feel that you should reflect on the budget proposals and this sensible alternative, and I urge you to vote for the amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Goodway, the father of the House.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is my 35th. And I have to advise Councillor Cowan that it's not her 22nd, but it's her 21st, because she wasn't here for the 1999 budget debate. And in those 35 years, I can tell you that the one thing that has impressed me most is the ability of party groups to send a clutch of councillors during every administration who are capable of preaching the economics of the kindergarten, who expose breathtaking ignorance as to the way that public finances actually work, that demonstrate a casual relationship with the details contained in a budget report, and who spread fake news about how capital projects are financed. Some things don't change. Councillors regurgitate the same speech that they used the year before, but I have to say there was a novel departure today. Councillor Bradbury regurgitated the speech of an opposition politician that had been used in a budget debate before. You know, I can forgive government in times of national crisis who have to tighten the belt, whether you use the term austerity or anything else. But that has not been what's happened over the last 10 years. At the beginning of that government, I concede that there was that need. But what the Conservative Party has done in the last 5 or 6 years isn't out of the need of national crisis. It's because it's in line with their own political doctrine, which I have to say was demonstrated during the Thatcher years, when local authorities were forced to make cuts of similar proportions at that time. So don't come here asking for forgiveness for doing what you're doing because you have to, because I tell you what is obvious to everybody, you don't. I hear councillors who tell us that we should be more commercial, and yet they have people in their ranks like Councillor Driscoll that every time the council tries to do something commercial, he speaks to me on social media saying we're competing against the private sector and that's not what we ought to be doing. It's time you guys got your messages aligned. And then we come to the issue of council tax. Let me tell you, Adrian, if you think that you're going to win an election next time on the issue of council tax, forget it. Jack Brooks taught me that no party has ever won an election by pledging to increase council tax. But no party has ever lost an election by failing to reduce it. And the issue for me is that we have an opportunity to do what's right by the city. And that's what this budget proposes to do. And I want to congratulate Councillor Weaver and the leader for showing the imagination and the grasp of public finances that are enabling us to do
Thank you, Councillor.
And that's why I want you all to support this budget.
I will now invite Councillor Weaver to sum up prior to the vote being taken. Please, can you indicate, Councillor Weaver, if you accept any of the alternative budget proposals?
I do not, Lord Mayor. Thank you. So I will... it's been a very interesting speech. There's been a lot of superhero quotes tonight, which is a new thing for a budget debate. I have a quote of my own. Dorothy L. Sayers, I always have a quotation for everything. It saves original thinking. And I'll just leave that there. I'll start with the opening comment from Councillor Hill-John on income generation, and I think I welcome his comments. I think it's worth reflecting and recognising the creativity and work that has gone on from officers and councillors over the last 8 years as they've wrestled with the changes to our services, and I think it's been commendable actually how they have dealt with that. We'll keep working to do more. Council tax has come up frequently tonight. I understand the desire to keep it as low as possible, but it is essential to keep it as high as needed, and I'm afraid there is simply a disagreement in this room. I do not believe that responsible councils across Wales are capable of setting council tax at the rate the principal opposition party have said tonight, for the very reason that they value the services that the people of their authorities rely on, and they know that people in those authorities will respect that decision. We are making this decision because it allows us to invest in the services we know are critical to the life of this city. You know, comment was made that the Labour members have not talked about Cardiff tonight. Well, all I've heard is them talking about Cardiff. The passion that every member who has spoken about the services that people rely on, they're talking about people in their wards and in this city, and they can see the potential this city can have, and they understand the frustration when we know that a lack of investment in our critical public services is holding this city back. And the people who need public services the most are those who have the least at home already, and that is what the Labour Party was set up for. God knows there's a lot of need in this city, and we will address it. There was comment that our settlement has been higher than other authorities. Yes, I mean, there's always some authorities going to be at the top and the bottom, but ours was down at 15th this year. We were below the Welsh average. I will just be very clear. I'm going to correct the utterly false statement that the Welsh Government set settlements on any kind of political leaning. That's absolutely untrue. It is clearly not the case or the process, and I think that is an outrageous statement to make. There have been comments about borrowing this evening. I will just say that we all have put in our proposals the same capital programme. The rates of repayment are not lower depending on which political party is in power, so I hope we all accept that this is the decision we're making. If you look actually at the financial resilience snapshot, Appendix 9A, you will see that in fact as a proportion of our revenue budget, the net capital financing costs are actually lower under these proposals than they were in 2011-12. So, you know, it's not an outrageous or imprudent way to borrow, but it is critical. One councillor asked us to congratulate the UK government on running the economy so well and the settlement we've received. Yeah, absolutely not. Congratulate a government that has cut Wales's budget for years and then gives a little back. It's like a mugger taking your wallet and then asking for a thank you when they hand you a tenner. It's outrageous. Labour councillors tonight have made fantastic contributions across the chamber. I'd like to thank them for the clarity of the priorities they've shown this administration. Councillor Stubbs talked about the pressure I feel, not just from cuts, but from Councillor Thomas and the ambitions of this administration. Yeah, it's pressure. We all are ambitious for this city, and that is pressure to deliver. But it is great to see. We are clear. Youth services, investment in schools, council house building, the climate emergency, young people and future generations, these are Labour priorities. We understand the investment this city needs and the responsibility that you have to take to give a secure, resilient budget that keeps those services for the future. It's prudence for a purpose, a budget for the future. Please vote for the Labour budget tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will now hand it over to officers to start voting on the alternative proposals.
Councillors, we will now vote on Amendment A, which was proposed by Councillor Hill-John and seconded by Councillor Robson. If you are in favour of Amendment A, please press 2. If you are against Amendment A, please press 3. And if you wish to abstain, please press 4. I will start the vote now.
And Amendment A is lost.
Councillors, we will now vote on Amendment B, which was proposed by Councillor Berman and seconded by Councillor Boyle. If you are in favour of the amendment, please press 2. If you are against the amendment, please press 3. And if you wish to abstain, please press 4. I will start the vote now.
And Amendment B is lost.
Councillors, we will now vote on Amendment C, which was proposed by Councillor McAvoy and seconded by Councillor Keith Parry. Please press 2 if you are in favour of the amendment. Please press 3 if you are against the amendment. And please press 4 if you wish to abstain. I will start the vote now.
And Amendment C is lost.
Councillors, we will now vote on the recommendations as set out in the Budget Proposals 2021 report. Please press 2 if you are in favour of the recommendations. Please press... Okay, councillors, we'll start again. Okay, we are now going to vote on the recommendations in the Budget Proposal report. Please press 2 if you are in favour of the recommendations in the report. Please press 3 if you are against the recommendations in the report. And please press 4 if you wish to abstain. I will start the vote now.
And the recommendations are approved. Item 10 is urgent business, and I've received no urgent business for this meeting. Unopposed business, items 11 to 12, are submitted as unopposed business. I will seek Council's approval on each of the items as follows. Item 11 is committee appointments to receive nominations to committee vacancies in accordance with party group wishes. The nominations received included on the amendment sheet agreed. Thank you very much. And item 12 is to approve the appointment of council representatives on outside bodies. The nominations received from party groups which were included on the amendment sheet agreed. That ends the meeting. Thank you all very much.